Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what, if neglected Naruto gets sealed away fairy tale. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Advent of Shadows and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. 1. A New World. Naruto's eyes shot open as he finally regained consciousness. He immediately tried to sit up, but he felt pain shoot through him when he did, so he remained lying down. Turning his head, he took in his surroundings as best as he could without being able to sit up or see too well as a result of it being dark. Still, he was able to make out that he was in a small room that resembled a hospital room, but he could tell right off the bat that it was not a hospital. The smell of medicine was easy to pick up, but it was warmer and quieter than any hospital he had ever been to. His short-term memory started coming back to him all of a sudden. He had been with Kakashi, chasing after the Akatsuki member named Deidara, who had taken Gaara's body and run off. They had eventually caught him and cornered him, but he had stolen back Gaara's body and began to self-destruct. I guess I didn't get out of the blast range quick enough. At least I made sure to throw Gaara to Sakura first though. The best he could come up with, he had been hit by the explosion just after he threw Gaara to his Kunoichi teammate. Still, one thing bugged him. He had seen Kakashi activate his Mangekyo Sharingan again. He should have been able to teleport the explosion away. Maybe he did. That has to be how I survived. It was a pretty big blast. As pain shot through him again, a new question occurred to him. Why hasn't Sakura finished healing me? I'm not going to die from it or anything, but it has to be something she could fix. Sakura, are you around? Naruto asked, finding it difficult to speak too loudly. Several minutes passed, and he received no answer. I could wait here until she gets back, but I really don't want to do that. Naruto would have been the first person to admit that he was impatient, especially when he had an alternative means of healing himself if need be. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. Give me some of your chakra, you damned fox! I'm not about to just lie around here when I could be walking around, so hurry up and pay your rent. As expected, a small portion of the fox's chakra shot through his chakra system, and he could feel his injuries gradually lessen until they were no more. At that time, he felt the fox's chakra dissipate. It was not the most pleasant entity that he had ever met, but he was glad that it had only given him the small amount that it did. Of course, it hated giving him any more chakra than it needed to unless it could manipulate him, which only occurred in battle. Naruto sat up and turned in the bed he was lying in. As he did, he noticed that the only clothes he had on at that moment were a pair of torn-up pants and his boxers underneath. I really did get him messed up, didn't I? He asked himself aloud. Looking at a table nearby, he saw his hip pouch, shuriken holder, and kunai holster were still intact, even though they were charred. His shirt was lying at the edge of the table, and he saw how damaged it was. It had about as much cloth left in it as a handkerchief had. Yes, you did, a voice that he had never heard before suddenly said. Looking to the door, he saw an older woman looking at him. She had pink hair tied in a bun, red eyes, and she wore a red cloak over dark clothes. In the darkness, he could not see her in any finer detail than that. Who are you? Naruto asked, clearly surprised. She looked as though she may have been related to Sakura because of the hair color, but he suspected that that was not the case. I should be asking you the same question, boy. After a single day, you wake up and are able to speak, and then when I come in to check on you, you start using some sort of demonic power to regenerate your wounds, she said with a stern look in her eyes. What are you? I'm a human, Naruto said with a frown. He hated hearing mention of demons, especially seeing as how he had one inside of him. Humans don't have demonic powers, she countered with an unwavering look in her eyes. Jinchuriki do, Naruto said as he looked back at her with a frown. And what is a Jinchuriki? She asked, actually appearing to be a little confused. Someone with a demon sealed inside of them, Naruto answered, surprising himself. He was not sure why he was being so open about what he was, but something about the woman had him at ease. There was no anger or judgment in her eyes, even when she brought up his demonic powers. I've never heard of a spell that could seal away a demon inside of a mortal, she said with a frown. What are you talking about? Naruto asked as he rose to his feet. Spells are just something you find in tales. Jutsu are real. Jutsu? The woman asked, sounding mystified. What are you talking about, boy? Naruto frowned at that. No one in the elemental nations could go without knowing what jutsu were. Where's Kakashi-sensei and Sakura? They should know what's going on, Naruto asked as a sense of foreboding came over him. I know of no one named Kakashi or Sakura, the woman said with a frown. I found you in the middle of the forest in a crater formed by a large explosion. The damage you sustained would have been fatal for almost anyone else, but you're clearly not normal. I see, Naruto said as he sat back down on the bed. When Kakashi-sensei used Kamui, I must have got caught in it. He said it could teleport his target to another dimension, but this is just ridiculous. What are you talking about? She asked, clearly irritated. It's a long story, Naruto said as looked at the table next to the bed once again. He recognized a charred piece of metal on the table as part of his forehead protector. I have time, she said. But since you're not a normal human, I'll at least let you know my name. I am Poorly Yusuka. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm from another dimension, Naruto said, not surprised by the skeptical look that she gave him. I'm from a land known as the Elemental Nations. Every country is named after a certain element, though some are a bit more elaborate, like the land of the waterfall and the land of waves. My sensei said the countries had a feudal type of government, whatever that means. But the important thing is that the most powerful men and women in the world were ninja. Ninja wear black and sneak around, don't they? She asked dryly. Not in my world, Naruto said, shaking his head. I think we were called ninja because we practiced ninjutsu, along with genjutsu and taijutsu. You mentioned spells, so does that mean that there are witches in this world? We have mages in this world, she answered, still not sounding as though she believed him. Well, the ninja of my world could use ninjutsu, which is pretty much like magic. I've seen people use it to turn the ground into a swamp, to shoot fire from their mouths, and even to form a dragon out of water. There's also genjutsu, which is like ninjutsu but is just illusions, and fuinjutsu, which is like ninjutsu but is based on sealing things away, Naruto explained with a frown. He hated explaining things, especially when he was not exactly knowledgeable about too much. Suppose I do believe you, she suddenly said. How did you get here? At that question, Naruto began to do his best to explain to her what happened with Gaara and Akatsuki. By the end of it, he hoped that he had explained it well enough for her to understand. I believe you, she said after he was done. Few can lie well enough to fool me, and I can tell you weren't lying. It's not the type of story most people will believe though. Naruto sighed in relief at that. So what do you plan on doing now that you're in Earthland? She asked. You cannot just stay here. No, that wouldn't do at all. You might not be a normal human, but you're still human. I don't like humans. I understand, Naruto said with a frown. I guess I could pass myself off as a mage. I don't know much about your mages, but my ninjutsu has to be pretty similar to magic. In that case, I have a responsibility before me, she said as she turned her back to him. I chose to bring you here and to heal you, so you are my responsibility for now. I will teach you everything you need to know to pass yourself as a mage and a citizen of Fiori. By the end of the week, I'll send you off to Magnolia. Thank you, Naruto said. The prospect that someone would help him so soon after he appeared in a strange new world brought him a great deal of happiness. Don't mention it, she said seriously. Now go to bed. I will begin teaching you about Earthland, Fiori, and mages in the morning. She immediately left the room at that point, and Naruto lay back down in the bed. As he tried to go to sleep, he could not help but feel fear and loneliness of the like he had never felt in his entire life. Not only was he alone in the new world, but he knew that he would never get the chance to see Jiraiya, Tsunade, Kakashi, Sakura, Iruka, or any of his other friends again. The prospect of going back to his world never crossed his mind, and that was for a fairly obvious reason. Even if he found someone who could send him to another dimension, it was highly unlikely that they would know where to send him to. In addition to that, he had a suspicion that Kakashi's Kamui sent targets to random dimensions, so the likelihood of anyone from the elemental nations finding him was about as slim as things came. He finally allowed sleep to claim him as the thoughts of his current situation filled him. On the morning of the 7th day, Naruto stood in a clearing a short ways south of the tree-like house that Poorly Yusuka lived in. No longer did he wear his shredded clothes. His new acquaintance had managed to get him some black closed-toe shoes, black pants, and a sleeveless black shirt. Though he had not thought to ask her where she got them from, he could not help but think it was a rather funny joke. After all, she had given a ninja all black clothing, just as she suggested was what ninja wore. The past 7 days had been fairly nice, in all reality. He had learned all about Fiori, mages, the guilds, magic since he arrived in Earthland, but that was not all he had accomplished. Poorly Yusuka thought she could get him out of her hair if she let him stay for a week, but she had underestimated him. Naruto's magnetic personality had already managed to dull her dislike enough that she had told him that he did not have to leave unless he wanted to. Of course, Naruto had no intention of staying. He was not the type of person who could have been happy by staying in a house in the middle of the forest, living like a hermit. He wanted to live a life of adventure and fun. As it turned out, she had offered him a chance to live the kind of life he wanted to. Apparently, she was an old friend of the leader of the nearby mage guild in Magnolia town. From the things he had heard of Fairy Tail, it sounded like a pretty interesting place. But at that moment, Naruto was not too thrilled. Despite the things that had started to go good for him, something had happened that was not a good thing. He had been seeing if all of his abilities still whirled in Earthland, and he had quickly learned that all of his jutsu did work in the new world, except for one. He was incapable of summoning toads. He had hoped to summon Gamakichi and pass on a message to Jiraiya, but even when he put in enough chakra to summon Gamabunta, nothing appeared, not even a tadpole. It seemed that cross-dimensional summoning was impossible. The knowledge that he could not see any familiar faces was hard on him, but he shook it off. He knew that everything happened for a reason, and he could only make the best of the situation at the present time. So, you're about to head to Magnolia Town? Poor Yusuke asked from behind him. I think it would be a good idea, he said with a nod of his head. I'm ready to do something. Besides, I want to see a real mage. You already have, she said dryly. I told you that I am a mage, didn't I? You did, Naruto said with a smile. But you won't show me your magic, so I don't really have anything to compare my abilities to. She just looked at him blankly outside. When you reach the fairy tale headquarters, seek out their master, Makarov. Tell him that I sent you and that you need to speak in private. Tell him everything, and he will let you in the guild. For being one of the strongest guilds out there, it's actually quite easy to become a member. Thanks, Naruto said as he looked away from the clearing and toward the nearby road that went west towards Magnolia. Before you go, you might want to take these, she said as she held out a black hip pouch, a black shuriken holster, and a black kunai holster. I went ahead of made you new ones and put your equipment in them. You might need them. You made them? Naruto asked curiously as he attached the hip pouch to his back left pocket and fastened the kunai and shuriken holsters around his right leg. What do you think I do when you're not around? She asked with raised eyebrow. I told you before. I don't like humans. It's less annoying to make new clothes than to go to the city and buy some. Thanks, Naruto said as he rolled his eyes. Stop by next time you're in the neighborhood, she said. I will, Naruto promised with a wave. As he made his way down the road, he reached into his pocket and removed a green crystal necklace from it. He had found it where he appeared in the forest. Fortunately, it had not been damaged in the least. Putting the first Hokage's necklace around his neck, he continued on his way. That day, the first day of June, he planned on becoming a mage of fairy tale. No one could have foreseen the aftershocks that would be left on the world as a result. 2. Fairy tale. Naruto had thought that he was prepared for anything. And then he stepped inside Magnolia. He had thought the Hidden Leaf Village and the Hidden Sand Village were massive, but they were relatively small in comparison to Magnolia. Walking down the street, he came to realize exactly how different the world he was in was than his world. The technology was more advanced, the towns and cities were more populous, and it was just completely different. He had thought they were similar enough. Ninja and mages both had special powers and did jobs for clients, but it seemed that the similarities stopped there for the most part. Turning to his left, Naruto came to a stop. Before him was a large white building with red roofs, orange framed windows, and orange oval-shaped doors that had a slight red tint to them. Above the doors was a golden sign with the words fairy tale written in blue. So this is a mage guild, he said to himself, shaking his head. It was hard to believe that a mage guild was so small, whereas the base of Ninja, a hidden village, was so large. I guess things really are different. Taking hold of the door handle, he pulled the door open, revealing what appeared to be a lunch hall with several long benches and tables stretched across the room. There were actually 2 sets of benches and tables, allowing a path to go from the door to the bar at the far wall from it. Looking around, Naruto saw that there were at least 50 people seated, and most of them were looking at him, no doubt curious as to what he was doing there. If a stranger had walked into the administration building back home, he had no doubt that they would get some curious looks. Clearing his throat, he said, "Is your master around? I was told that I needed to speak with him." A woman a few years older than Naruto made her way down the center aisle with a smile on her face. She had long white hair with a portion of it bound in a frontward ponytail and blue eyes. She wore a maroon dress with pink trimming on it and a pink bow. He took note of the fact that she was exactly the type of girl Jiraiya liked to research. Naturally, that thought saddened him a bit. "Hello, I'm Mary Jane," she said with a cheerful smile. "Master should be around here somewhere." "I'm up here." Naruto and Mary Jane both looked up to the second floor, where a short, old man with balding white hair and a thick mustache was sitting. He had on an orange and white attire on with a striped blue and orange hat that looked as though it had some kind of horns on it. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and a mutual acquaintance sent me here," Naruto said as he looked at the man. "Her name is Poor Yusuke." That earned everyone's attention immediately. "Very well then," the man said as he jumped down to the ground. "My name is Makarov. If she sent you, we can talk in the basement about whatever it is that brings you here." "Thanks," Naruto said with a light smile. With that, he followed the older man to the basement, ignoring all of the eyes that were on him. "And that's my story," Naruto said as he sat on a crate opposite of Makarov. "This is most unexpected," Makarov said with a frown. Poorly Yusuka wouldn't have sent you here if she didn't believe you, and I'll trust her judgment on this matter. Thank you, Naruto said as he exhaled a deep breath. I do want you to use this power of yours though, Makarov said suddenly. I can sense magic better than most people, but what I sense within you is weak and unusual. It's nothing like the magical power that mages wield. Nodding, Naruto formed the ram hand sign and channeled chakra. Immediately, Makarov's eyes widened. That power, if that energy was ordinary magical power, you would have more than any but myself and the strongest mage in fairy tale. It's different than normal magical power though. It's almost as though it's alive. It is, Naruto said with a nod. It's chakra, the combination of my spiritual and physical energy. Losing all of my chakra is as fatal as losing all of my blood. When a mage loses all of his magic power, he gets very ill, but it does not necessarily spell death, though it is not out of the question, Makarov said thoughtfully. So why have you come to tell me of this? I wish to join fairy tale, Naruto answered, surprising him. I know I'll probably never be able to return to my world, so I might as well do something with my life. Makarov grew quiet as he went deep in thought. After several minutes, he said, I will not turn you away. Understand that joining fairy tale is not a small matter though. We are a family in all but blood, and it's to be expected that you would do anything for a fellow member. It's like the will of fire. I understand, Naruto said with determination in his eyes. Very well then, Makarov said as he hopped down from the crate that he had been sitting on. I will allow you to join fairy tale. I have seen your eyes, and I can tell that you have had a rough life. You'll find that many of the mages in fairy tale have similar experiences, so I have no doubt that you'll fit in sooner or later. However, your past will need to stay shrouded in mystery for the most part. Tell anyone who asks that you come from another land if you wish, but I'd prefer if you kept how distant that land is from Fiori to yourself. I understand, Naruto said. He hated the prospect of keeping his entire life secret, but he could understand it. How am I to explain my abilities, though? In this world, there are types of magic that are lost in the annals of history, Makarov said thoughtfully. If you wish to, you may claim that yours is such a magic. This ninjutsu is clearly different from anything anyone else has ever seen. I guess that would work, Naruto said. He clearly understood the difficulties of explaining how he used his abilities. It would not take a genius to discover that his abilities were different, even if they were somewhat similar to ordinary forms of magic. After all, he had been told that some mages used an ability called Requip, which was very similar to sealing and unsealing items from scrolls. In addition to that, some mages could transform, which was essentially the same as him using the transformation jutsu. Now we will come upstairs, and I'll have you registered as a member of Fairy Tail. After you're given the Fairy Tail stamp, you can start doing jobs, though I'd suggest that you ask another member to accompany you at first. It's not uncommon for new members to do jobs with older members at first, Makarov said as he began to make his way to the door. I guess that makes sense. What is a Fairy Tail stamp though? Suddenly, Makarov came to a stop and looked back at Naruto. Out of curiosity, do you have a penchant for destruction? Naruto grew thoughtful at that. He would not have described his abilities as destructive in all honesty. Without the ability to summon toads, his only techniques were the academy-level jutsu, basic skill with Fuin jutsu, the shadow clone jutsu, the multi-shadow clone jutsu, the Rasengan, and the Great Rasengan. None of them were overly destructive. Still, the question gave him pause. He remembered how destructive his battle with Sasuke had been at the Valley of the End thanks to his one-tailed form. Only when I get serious, Naruto said with a nervous chuckle. Makarov actually gave him a smile and said, you'll fit right in. Naruto had no idea what the old man meant by that, but he was sure he would find out soon enough. As they reached the ground floor, everyone's eyes turned to them. Mira, would you get a stamp out for our new member? Makarov asked, looking to Mira Jane with a smile. Mixed reactions came from that question. It seemed that half of the people present were surprised while the other half looked excited. Sure thing, master, Mira Jane said with her cheerful smile as she went around to the other side of the bar. Here you go. As she said the last part, she set a stamp on the bar. Makarov walked over to the bar, took the stamp, and looked to Naruto. Where would you like it? It won't wash off so long as you are part of Fairy Tail, so you don't want to think too lightly of its placement. Without a hint of hesitation, Naruto stuck his right arm out, allowing Makarov to leave a black stamp of the Fairy Tail emblem on the middle of his right arm. It is official then, Makarov said as he handed the stamp back to Mira Jane. You are now a member of Fairy Tail. Congratulations, Naruto Uzumaki, Mira Jane said as she walked over to him. You'll enjoy your time in Fairy Tail. Just Naruto is fine, he said with a light smile. I'm looking forward to it, thought I bet I'll stay busy. I just got to town, so I need to find a place to stay. Next to the bar, you can find the request board. All of the jobs that you can take are pinned to it. When you decide on what, just take it down and head to meet up with the client at the destination marked on the paper, Mira Jane explained. So it doesn't have to actually get assigned to you like missions in the Hidden Leaf Village. That's kind of cool. Master Makarov said I should have an older member accompany me at first, Naruto said as he leaned against the bar. He quickly took note that everyone had already turned their attention away from him and Makarov was nowhere in sight. Ah, well, that happens, Mary Jane said as she looked around the room. It would probably be best that you ask someone who isn't already in a team. A team? Naruto asked curiously. Yeah, she said with a cheerful nod. When a few mages work well together, they often form a team. Teams can accomplish more difficult missions easier than single mages can. Ah, okay, Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. I'm actually not from Fiori, so I'm not too knowledgeable about things like that. Oh, so that explains how you didn't know who I was, she said. Naturally, Naruto did not realize that she was essentially the cover model for Fairy Tail at the time. Well, the best people you could ask to accompany you would be Mikao Conbolt, Grey Fullbuster, Loke, or my brother, Elfman. Naruto watched her point at each of the individuals in question. It was easy to see that Mikao was a more experienced member, if his age said anything about the matter. The giant S-shaped necklace he wore was a bit more flashy than he was used to though. The one named Grey did not impress Naruto too much at a first glance. He looked like he was laid back, but it was hard to make any further judgments about a guy who was only wearing boxers in public. Then there was Loke, who had no less than 4 girls sitting with him. He instantly reminded Naruto of a mix of Sasuke and Jiraiya. He could clearly get girls without trying, like Sasuke could, but he actually welcomed it, like Jiraiya would have. And then his eyes went to the large man with spiked white hair that was sitting at one of the far tables. Though there was nothing menacing about his casual blue suit, Naruto immediately saw the scar running down the right side of his face, and he felt that there was something unusual about the man. Just going by his first impressions, Naruto could not help but feel a little underwhelmed. It was hard to believe that those 4 were the ones that she was suggesting. Who would recommend most for the new guy? Naruto asked. Before Mary Jane could say anything, someone else spoke. I'll go with you. Naruto's eyes were drawn to a brown-haired girl sitting at the bar. She was easily a few years older than him, but that did not stop her from having over a dozen empty bottles of beer in front of her. Clad in a blue bikini top and a pair of knee-length black shorts, the teen was attractive to say the least. Naturally, Naruto was on edge when around nearly every attractive girl that he met. They always turned out to be very strong. He just hoped she was not ill-tempered like his last female teammate. This is Kana Alberona, Mary Jane said. She's the most senior member of Fairy Tail in our age group. Naruto noticed a slight irritation in Kana's eyes at the words, though he would not understand it for a long time to come. I was about to go and take a job anyways. At least this way I'll get to see what the newcomer is capable of before anyone else, she said before she downed another bottle of booze. How is she not drunk? The question would not leave Naruto, but he soon came to the realization that he would not figure that one out at the present time. I already picked a job. If you want in, just say so, she said as she turned to face him. We just have to pick up some family heirloom and take it to Harjin, and the pass is 100,000 jewels. I don't have a problem splitting it 50-50. Sure, I'll go, Naruto said with a nod of his head. It sounds like a pretty simple job. She merely rose to her feet and said, let's go then. If we hurry up, we might be in time for the 2 o'clock train. Though he followed after her, he could not help but wonder one thing. What is a train? It seemed that poorly Yusuke had left out a couple things in when she was teaching him. While Naruto and Kana were making their way to pick up the family heirloom for their job, Makarov was standing in front of a tree-like house in the forest to the east of Magnolia. After Naruto had become an official member of Fairy Tail, he had decided to visit his old friend to check up on Naruto's story, among other things. Hello Makarov, poorly Yusuke greeted as she walked outside of her house with an emotionless expression on her face. I was expecting you. I imagine so, he said as he crossed his arms. Is he really a ninja from another dimension? Very straightforward, she commented. Yes, he is as he says he is. I've ran tests on him. He's as human as you would expect, but he is different from the humans of this world. You mean the source of power within him his chakra? Makarov asked for a frown. That's not what truly makes him different, poorly Yusuke said, almost amused. He must have left some bits and pieces of his story out. He has a powerful demon sealed within him. According to him, it possesses more power than I could imagine. Makarov frowned, but he could not feel angry at Naruto for leaving something like that out. He was starting to suspect that the demon was the source of the pained life he had clearly led. He is not aware of how powerful mages can be, Makarov said quietly. Regardless, the demon is of little consequence for now. If my suspicions are correct, no mage has the power to dispel a seal created from the techniques of his world. He warned me that if he dies, the demon will be freed, but it will take several years for it to reform, poorly Yusuke said as she turned her back to him. Then he just won't die, Makarov said without any hint of surprise or worry. Even if it was too powerful to kill, there were ways of defeating such a creature. The greatest accomplishment of Grey Foolbuster's teacher sprung to mind at that thought. Good, she said as she began to walk back to her house. Keep an eye on him. He could be used as a weapon if the right person gets a hold of him. And even if he doesn't, there is still the issue of whether any offspring he has will inherit his abilities. Turning away from her, Makarov made his way back to Magnolia, fully aware of the implications of her last statement. He could very well introduce a new source of magic to the world, and there was no telling what would happen if he sired a child that possessed his abilities in addition to the magic that was native to Earthland. 3. A simple job. Naruto sighed as he looked out the window of the train. He was not too fond of it due to the fact that he was left with nothing to do, and it was not too much faster than he could run. Of course, he did his best to ignore the latter since he doubted that the mage with him could match his speed. Looking at the girl in the opposite seat of him, his eyes found their way to the small wooden box that the client's family heirloom was in. They did not stay on the box for long though. He knew absolutely nothing about his temporary partner, so he decided to try to pass the time in another way. Hey Kana, what kind of magic do you use? She seemed to brighten up at that question as she reached behind her. Her hands found their way in front of him a moment later with a deck of cards. I use card magic. I'm a holder-type mage who can use these cards to devastating effect. With the right card, I could put someone to sleep. That's just the beginning though. Each one has a different ability, and some of them can be combined together for my most powerful attacks. It's pretty unique, Naruto said as he sat back in his seat. Poorly Yusuka had told him about Gun's magic, requip, transformation, takeover, and many other kinds of magic, but she had never spoke of card magic. How many different types of mages are there in the guild? Kana grew deep in thought at that question. Well, there's no easy way to answer that question. There are mages with just about every kind of magic out there in fairy tale. What kind of magic does Mira Jane have? He asked curiously. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that most beautiful women he met were incredibly powerful, but he felt there was something special about her. You can call her Mira. Everyone does, she said as she looked out the window. You wouldn't know it, seeing as how she pretty much stays at the guild all the time as a waitress, but Mira is probably the 5th strongest mage in the guild excluding Master Makarov, of course. Because of an incident that happened a couple years ago, she pretty much stopped fighting or doing jobs. Even so, she is a skilled practitioner of transformation magic and takeover. Naruto immediately realized that it was not a topic that she wished to discuss, so he decided not to ask about the incident. What about you? She asked. What types of abilities do you have? You have never seen anyone with abilities like mine, Naruto said, nearly laughing at the look she gave him. Fine, I'll tell you a bit. I use a special type of magic that is unique to my homeland. It's similar to some of the kinds of magic you've seen before, but it's different at the same time. I have my own versions of transformation and requip, and I have a few other abilities. Before she could say anything, the train began to come to a screeching halt, despite the fact that they were not quite halfway to their destination. Once the train finally came to a stop, Kana looked at him seriously. And here I thought you wouldn't get to see what our guild is infamous for right off the bat, she said as she rose to her feet and handed him the box. Trains like this only come to a sudden stop in the middle of nowhere when someone pulls the emergency brakes. My guess is that someone's tried to rob it. What are we waiting for? Naruto asked as he put the box in his hip pouch as he rose to his feet. That's the spirit, she said as she led him to one of the doors and out of the train. As they reached the outside of it, they saw that there was some kind of rock barrier in front of the train. In addition to that, a few men were making their way to another set of doors to board the train. Yeah, they're definitely going to try to rob it. I'd say they're members of a dark guild too. That's just like what you'd expect from them. Regardless, we need to stop them from getting on board. A fight inside the train will spell disaster, Kana said. Suddenly, she looked over to where Naruto had been standing and saw that he had disappeared. Her eyes widened in shock as she saw that he was blocking their access to the door. I didn't even hear him move. How in the hell did he cover so much distance so quickly and without me even realizing it? Can he teleport? She immediately took off running towards them, knowing that the only way she would get her answer was by catching up with him. Upon seeing the mages that were no doubt trying to rob the train, Naruto had sprung into action. The body flicker technique was among the few jutsu that he knew, and it worked well enough in circumstances like that. Appearing in front of the door that they were headed to, he saw that there were 3 mages there. One of them was standing at the front of the train where the rock barrier was, and the other 2 were not far from him. I'll give you one chance, Naruto said as he looked the mages in the eyes. Remove that rock wall and leave. And what if we don't? One of them asked, clearly unafraid. In that case, I'll have to knock you around, Naruto said as he began to mold chakra. Earth make, rock lance, one of the mages suddenly called out as he put his hands together in a manner that Naruto had never seen before. His right hand was balled in his fist, and his left hand was spread open. Suddenly, a number of rock spikes shot out from the ground at him. A smile made its way to his face shortly before they hit. Upon seeing the 4 rock lances hit Naruto and go through him, her eyes widened in fear. It was not that she did not think she could beat the mages. She was not exactly one of the weakest members in Fairy Tail after all. Under her watch, the newest member of Fairy Tail had just sustained wounds that had to be fatal. Even if she were forgiven for such a thing, she did not believe that she could forgive herself. She immediately withdrew 3 cards and ran towards them. Card Magic, Summoned Lightning, she called out her attack as she sent it flying at the nearest mage. The lightning that hit the enemy mage took him out in one blow, but she was stopped by her tracks what she saw after he was taken down. Where Naruto's body had been, there was now a log. It was being impaled by the rock lances just like Naruto had been. And then she saw him. Naruto was standing behind the other mage, who had just slumped down to the ground in unconsciousness. He was completely unharmed, much to her shock. How in the world is he alive? Naruto took a deep breath as he walked over to Kana, who appeared to be disturbed. What's up with her? How did you survive that? Kana asked, looking at the impaled log. That's a substitution, Naruto answered with a chuckle. It makes it look like I get injured, but I switch with something right before I get attacked. Sorry I didn't show myself immediately after. I wanted to take out the guy at the front of the train and get a look at that rock wall first. She took a deep breath and gave him a smile. In that case, we need to tie these guys up and deal with that rock wall. You tie them up, I'll deal with the rock wall, Naruto said, immediately knowing the best way to deal with the situation at hand. Okay, she said as she turned her attention to the unconscious mages. Naruto simply walked to the front of the train and looked at the wall again. Its bottom was curved upward, so it blocked the train, but it did not touch the railroad tracks. He quickly created a few shadow clones and created a Rasengan. Once I finish, I need you all to push it to the other side, he said to the clones. He quickly pushed the Rasengan through the wall, carving straight through it. Immediately afterwards, the clones pushed the wall to the opposite direction. The rock wall immediately went over and the last support that kept it to the ground snapped. It crashed to the ground with a loud sound, but it caused no harm. At that point, there were pieces of rock jutting out of the ground about a foot on both sides of the railroad track, but they would in no way interfere with the train's movements. Naruto grabbed the last mage and dragged him back over to Kana so she could tie him up. When he reached her, his attention went to the rock spikes that had tried to impale him. It seemed that each one of the spikes went about 6 inches into the train itself. It looks like we damaged it a little, Naruto said as he stuck his hand in his hip pouch. It's hard to believe we didn't at least destroy the train tracks, Kana commented offhand as she worked on tying up the last mage. We normally do more than that. Thoughts of Makarov's question about having a penchant for destruction came to mind. I think I understand now. I'll deal with these 2, Naruto said as he removed 4 paper bombs from his hip pouch and attached them to the spikes. What are those? Kana asked, interested in what he was doing. Back up, Naruto said as he walked away from it, and formed a one-handed hand seal. Suddenly, they exploded, shocking Kana. It shattered a good portion of the rock spikes immediately, and the spikes fell out of the train. Those are paper bombs, Naruto said as he removed another one and handed it to her. I'm probably the only one who is capable of setting them off. Kana took the paper bomb and walked back to the train doors, clearly interested in the object. It's kind of like card magic, but it has these runes on it. My magic's a bit unique, Naruto said with a grin. You call them runes, I call them seals. Once they were back on the train and it was moving again, Kana asked the question that Naruto had been expecting. What kind of mage are you? You didn't use any magic to attack them. All you did was use the strange spell to dodge it. In my land, we don't have mages. We have shinobi, Naruto said after a few moments. Shinobi are trained to fight with physical skills, in addition to using a unique brand of magic. I'm the only one of my kind in this world now, though. I'm sorry, she said, clearly believing that he meant that his people were all in the afterlife. It's fine, Naruto said quietly. I'm just happy to have Fairy Tail now. That's good to hear, she said with a smile. When we get back, we're going to have a drink together. I don't know, Naruto said a little warily. I'm still a few months away from being 16. You're legal, she said with a wink. The legal age in Fiori is 15. Why not? Naruto asked after a few moments. But let's wait until the night after we get back. I still need to find an apartment. Sounds good to me, she said with a grin. You'll especially need it if she hears that our newcomer is responsible for the damages to the train. Who is she? Naruto asked in confusion. You'll see, she said with a laugh. Despite his questioning of what she meant, he never figured out who he needed to be wary of. The following night, Naruto and Kana were sitting at the bar in Fairy Tail. Though the latter was literally drinking barrels of alcohol, Naruto had only gotten a single bottle of beer. He was not exactly fond of the taste, but the act of drinking seemed to be less about the taste and more about the interactions with everyone around. You should have seen it, Kana said, looking to Mira Jane. He has this strange kind of magic that lets him switch his body with another object to dodge attacks. Really? She asked, intrigued by the unusual ability. It was actually the third time that Kana had told the story of what happened, but with the ever-changing crowd near the bar, it was not difficult for it to be told repeatedly without new people hearing it. It's just my substitution, Naruto said, waving it off. I didn't even have to go all out against them. Oh yeah, you never used those other abilities of yours. I think you said you can use Requip and Transformation, didn't you? Kana asked. Sort of, Naruto said, knowing that his abilities were similar to those but still very different. Everyone was intrigued by the knowledge that he had at least 3 types of magic, one of which they had never heard of. Still, their attention did not stay on him long. Only 2 people really stayed focused on him, and that was Mary Jane and Makarov. So did you get an apartment yet? Mary Jane asked curiously. Yeah, it's just a 50,000 jewel apartment, but it'll work well enough, he answered. She immediately frowned. That must not be a very good place. I've lived in worse, Naruto said with a shrug. Maybe you'll find a better place later on, she said as the frown was replaced with her usual smile. Maybe, he said as he continued drinking. 4. Naruto vs. Erza. Naruto had been a member of Fairy Tail for a week now. Since joining, he had spent a great deal of time in the Fairy Tail base and going out on jobs. So far, he had only worked with Kana and Mikao, though he had not actually gone out of Magnolia on any jobs. As tedious as the more mundane jobs were, he did not have a problem with staying in town too much. Everything seemed to be becoming normal around the base, but things could not stay normal for too long, especially when it came to Fairy Tail. I still think you should let Levy take a look at those paper bombs of yours. She could probably figure out how to make paper bombs that people with normal magic could use, Kana remarked as she looked at Naruto from her barstool. I'll think about it, Naruto said for the millionth time. In all honesty, he did not know if it was such a good idea to give the world a new weapon. As such, he had taken to keeping all of his ninja equipment in more secure places. In the past week, he had managed to recreate a seal that Jiraiya had told him about. It was called Summoning, Lightning Blade Creation. It was essentially seals in the form of wristbands that he could store all of his ninja equipment in. He had ceased to carry around his hip pouch or holsters. Instead, all of his shuriken and kunai were sealed in his left wristband while his scrolls, paper bombs, ninja wire, smoke bombs, and Fuma shuriken were sealed in his right wristband. The wristbands themselves were a mixture of black cloth and off-white canvas. The canvas material stayed at the inside of his arms and was what he actually drew the seals on. You always say that, she complained. If I could apply those to some cards, I could do some pretty cool stuff. Master Makarov wouldn't be happy if I gave anyone here something else they could use to blow things up, Naruto said with a frown. It was an excuse that was made up on the spot, but he saw that the old mage actually nodded his head in agreement at his words. We know that only Naruto's unique brand of magic is capable of setting one of those off, so we might as well let him stay as the only person who can use them, Makarov said. At least he didn't take it badly when he realized that not even he could activate them. Shaking his head, he looked at the master of Fairy Tail. So how'd the council take the apology? Makarov's eyes lit up with humor. They overreacted quite a bit. It was the members of that minor dark guild that damaged the train. Still, they seemed to believe it only happened because you were there. It did, Naruto agreed. If we weren't there, they probably would have just robbed the passengers and then let the train pass unharmed. You two did the right thing, Makarov said with a sigh. It was easy to see that the council still were not happy about the minor damages that the train sustained, despite the fact that Naruto had personally written a letter of apology. When is Natsu due back? Mary Jane suddenly asked. He's still desperate to find Igneel. There's no telling when he'll be back. I gave him a couple months of leave from the guild to search, so we should hear back from him in the next month, Makarov answered. Who is Natsu? Naruto asked curiously. Natsu is the salamander of Fairy Tail, Kana answered. He uses a lost magic known as Fire Dragon Slayer magic. He is one of the strongest guys in our age group. He's a hothead, Gray commented from his seat near the bar. Damn it, Gray, put some clothes on, Naruto said the instant he saw him. He had yet to figure out why the guy always seemed to end up in his boxers. Oh crap, how'd that happen? Gray asked as he started searching for his clothes. Someone's running, Naruto suddenly said, looking towards the door. Loke walked through the door, breathing heavily. She's coming. Much to Naruto's confusion, everyone became very attentive and started behaving far more than normal. Just as Loke took a seat, the doors opened and a woman began to walk into the building. Her upper body was clad in some kind of armor, despite the fact that she was wearing a blue skirt and black boots. Her most distinctive features were her long scarlet hair and her brown eyes, however. "That's her," Kana muttered under her breath. Naruto instantly remembered the last time she used such emphasis on that word. "So who is she?" "Hello, master," she said as she stopped a few yards away. "Hello, Erza," Makarov said pleasantly. "Your job finished early, I take it?" "Yes," she said, looking at Naruto. "And on the way back, I heard about a new member who is responsible for a destroyed train." "I didn't destroy the train," Naruto said with a frown, though he realized immediately that he should have stayed quietly. "Don't cause trouble. That's not what fairy tale's about," she said with annoyance in her voice. "I thought fairy tale was a place for people with a penchant for destruction," Naruto commented in an offhanded manner. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Gray slap his forehead with his right hand. "You thought wrong," she said as she went to hit him over the head. Her fist hit nothing but air as Naruto vanished in a flicker of leaves right before she made contact. "Are you sure?" Naruto asked, standing behind her. "I'm pretty sure it's in the handbook." "You don't know who I am, do you?" she asked almost too nicely. "He's going to meet Titania's wrath if he keeps it up," one of the mages in the room whispered, though Naruto barely heard it. "Should I?" he asked, doing his best to keep a straight face. He was starting to suspect that the girl in front of him was dangerous. "I believe it's time for the newbie to learn some manners," she said, balling her fists. "Why would I want to fight you?" he asked, oblivious to who she was. Naruto, you need to be careful," Makarov said nervously. "That's Erza, the strongest girl in fairy tale." "Maybe I'll fight her then," Naruto said, looking excited suddenly. "I haven't been pushed to my limits in a while. I'd love to see how strong I am compared to someone who others consider to be strong." "Take it out back then," Makarov said with a sigh. "I can already tell your fight's going to be destructive." "We'll see," Erza said as she walked back to the doors and left the building, obviously going around. "How dangerous is she?" Naruto asked as he made his way to the doors. "There are only 3 other than Master Makarov who might be stronger than her," Kana answered. "Maybe that'll be after I'm through," Naruto said as he walked outside of the building. Over his shoulder, he saw that just about everyone was starting to stand up and follow him. "Either I'm going to show them how strong I am, or I'm going to look like a dumbass for agreeing to fight someone so tough." Either way, he knew that he was about to be pushed to his limits for the first time since he appeared in Earthland. "I'll give you one chance to apologize for your words," Erza said as she stood across from Naruto. She was still wearing her standard armor and did not have any weapons out. "If you choose not to take up this chance, you will regret it." "No thanks," Naruto said as he dropped into a taijutsu stance, surprising everyone except for Makarov and Kana, both of which knew about his fighting style. "Very well then," she said as she popped her neck. "You may begin," Makarov said as he stood on the sidelines along with every member of Fairy Tail and Magnolia at that moment. Immediately, Erza dashed forward and threw a punch at Naruto's face. Much to her surprise, he caught her fist with his right hand and kicked her in the side with his left leg. He immediately jumped back, grimacing in pain. The armor was even stronger than he thought. The simple fact that he was able to block her attack and counter it left many in the audience wondering how strong he was. "You're fast," Erza commented as she stood unharmed by his kick. "I can't say much about your strength though." "I can't say much about your speed or strength," Naruto said with a grin. "He's going to regret saying that," Gray said with a groan. Immediately, a long sword appeared in Erza's hand and she dashed towards him. As she reached him, she brought it down in a powerful arc. Just before she reached him, Naruto touched the seal on his left wristband twice, summoning 2 kunai. He took one in each hand and raised them above his head in a cross position. The sword came to a complete stop as it met the kunai. "So you can requip," Erza commented. "That explains why you didn't start using offensive spells against me when it started." "I'm not the only one," Naruto said as he jumped back and threw the kunai in his left hand at her. Before she could react, it struck her in the left side of her chest, but it barely even nicked her armor. Still, the spot he hit was alarming to her. "That was aimed for my heart," she said with a frown. "Most mages don't go for killing blows." "You're wearing armor," Naruto said with a shrug. "Very well then," Erza said as light enveloped her. "She's switching armor," Kana said as she leaned forward in anticipation. "So she can equip weapons and armor? I definitely can't do switch clothes or armor with my abilities. Damn, requip magic is definitely better than I thought." Naruto's jaw dropped as he saw the form she took on. She had a leopard-patterned chest armor and shoulder guard, in addition to a cloth that covered her left side from the waist to her knees and a pair of leopard ears on her head. She also appeared to have a tail. Her legs were covered by tall blue boots and her arms were covered by arm coverings of the same color. The most alarming thing for him was that she was essentially wearing a leopard print bra and black panties. "If you're trying to make me faint, you're going to have to do better than that," Naruto said, thankful that his time editing Jiraiya's latest novel had built up his resistance to things like that. Before he could process anything further, Erza moved forward. The female knight that never held back, as she was appropriately called, switched her long sword to a short sword as she moved to attack him. Much to everyone's shock, even hers, the blade went through Naruto's stomach. Worry was clear in her eyes as she saw what she had done. She had never meant to actually injure him so badly. He had displayed enough speed that she suspected that he could dodge it. "So, he's using that," Kana suddenly said. Before their very eyes, Naruto turned into a log. "What kind of magic is this?" Erza pondered as she set the log down, put her foot down on it, and pulled her sword free. "Catch this," Naruto said, drawing their attention to the top of the fairy tale building just as a giant shuriken appeared in his hands. With all of his strength, he hurled it at her. "That won't work," she said calmly as she moved out of the way with ease. "My flight armor increases my speed." "She's a tough opponent," Naruto said with a sigh. "I guess I'll have to do this another way." With a chakra-enhanced jump, he leapt down towards her with a fist pulled back. About halfway there, he exploded in a cloud to dust. In his place, Kana fell to the ground. She fell straight to the ground and did not appear to be in a fighting position at all. Confused looks came across many of the faces. No one thought to look amongst the crowd for answers though. "What are you doing out here?" Erza asked in confusion. "Naruto must have used that substitution spell of his to swap with me," she said as she rose to her feet and dusted herself off. "Seriously, that's a cheap tactic. He shouldn't do that just to make you lose sight of him." Erza frowned even more and began to look around. As soon as Erza turned her back on the girl, Kana's right fist lit up with blue energy that shocked the audience, and she hit Erza square in the back, sending her flying away. "How do you like my new technique?" Kana said, but it was not Kana's voice that came out. It was Naruto's. "I call it the chakra hammer." As soon as Erza looked at her attacker, she saw Kana disappear in a cloud of smoke. In her place was Naruto. "Look to see if she's in the audience next time," Naruto said with a grin. Kana simply facepalmed at his words and actions. "You can transform too?" Erza asked, shaking her head. "You're pretty good, even if you can only pull some pretty cheap tactics off." "I haven't outnumbered you yet," Naruto pointed out, earning outright confusion from everyone. His hands formed his signature hand sign. At that time, no one knew about his signature technique, but that would change soon enough. In an instant, 100 identical copies of Naruto appeared around her. "You can create tangible copies of yourself?" Erza asked, sounding impressed. It was starting to seem as though she had forgotten her initial purpose of fighting her. "This is my favorite ability. They are called shadow clones. Each one has my abilities, but my power is divided evenly between them and me," Naruto said with a smile. In all honesty, he was explaining it because his comrades were around. He knew that he could not hide all of his abilities from them. He figured that if they knew he could use the technique, then he might as well explain it. "You've put up a better fight than anyone else in my age group," Erza said suddenly. "You've earned some of my respect. However, this is where you lose." "He did well," Makarov commented. Naruto was thrown off by Erza and Makarov's words as though he had already lost, but he did not understand. Erza was engulfed by light once again. In an instant, her arms and armor were replaced. He was shocked by what he saw when the light faded. The details of the armor were hard to take in quickly, but it seemed to be a dress made of blades. In addition to that, her legs and arms were covered in plate armor. In each hand, she held a long sword. As if that was not menacing enough, she had a dozen swords floating around her. He quickly came to the realization that Jiraiya would have liked the girl. Her armor just barely covered her breasts, and she was incredibly dangerous. His pervert of a master had always loved girls like that for some strange reason. "You've been holding back on me," Naruto commented. "They like to say I can hold back," Erza said as she looked at the real Naruto. "However, I do my best to hold back enough that I don't kill my opponents." "I do too," Naruto said under his breath. He had no intention of going out any further than he had already done so though. Using the Nine-Tails chakra was out of the question, as far as he was concerned. In addition to that, using the Rasengan against a comrade was just about as big of a taboo in his mind that he could imagine. "I forfeit," Naruto said, dismissing the clones. It surprised everyone, seeing as Erza had not even attacked, but his next words stopped all doubts. "A single hit will destroy one of those clones, no matter how minor of an injury as it would be normally. You win this time, Erza." "Very well," Erza said as she suddenly changed back into her normal armor, and her weapons disappeared. "Not many have the guts to stand up to me, and even fewer have the ability to last as long as you did. But the thing that makes you stand out the most, in my opinion, is that you know when to back down." With that, she walked up to him, and then she hit him over the head, knocking him to the ground. But if you mouth off to me again, I'll kick your ass. Now I know you can take it. Naruto groaned as he started to stand up. He could not help but hate that he had been outmatched by her, but that fight changed things in a way he had not expected. He had proven to everyone that he could stand his ground against Fairy Tail's Titania fairly well, despite the fact that he was one of the youngest members of Fairy Tail. 5. Mount Hakob. 2 weeks had passed since Naruto had fought Erza, and his defeat had only caused himself to push his limits further and further. He was determined to become stronger than the armor-wearing mage no matter what. Still, it was no easy feat when he had no one who could teach him any more ninjutsu. He had actually tried to learn to use requip magic with his chakra as a power source, but it had ended in failure, as expected. His only option was to work on his jutsu. Still, there had been one useful discovery from his attempts to learn to use requip magic. Naruto had essentially learned to requip clothing, though he obviously had to do it through Fuinjutsu. It had come in handy for his current mission though. The previous night, Mikao Kambolt had invited him to go on a job to Mount Hakob to deal with a problem that had been bothering the residents of a small town a little ways away from the mountain's base. So in the end, he had gotten to use his special form of requip to put on a long black coat that he had bought just for the mission. Given that it was summer, he doubted that he would need the coat outside of the mission, but the mountain had a tendency to snow year-round. So what exactly is the job? Naruto asked as he walked up the winding path with Mikao. His head had a light coat of snow atop it, though that was simple because he kept shaking it off after it built up too much. Sorry about making you wait outside the town while I talked to the mayor, Mikao apologized. It's fine, Naruto said with a shrug. It's still summer around the town. Right, Mikao said as he cleared his throat. 20 Vulcans are causing them problems. What is a Vulcan? Naruto asked curiously. A Vulcan is a ferocious beast. It's kind of like a monkey, but it's probably twice as tall as you are. Its strength and intelligence are remarkable for a mere beast, Mikao explained. But the biggest thing is that it can use take-over magic. It survives by taking over the bodies of humans. Do they look like humans after they do it? Naruto asked in confusion. No, their bodies return to normal right after they perform a takeover, Mikao answered. We should find all 20 of them in a cave towards the top of the mountain. So we're going to be fighting 20 of these guys at one time? Naruto asked. When his ally nodded, he whistled. You must be pretty tough if you're willing to do a job like this. I would have done it by myself, but I'd rather split the money than risk my chances against 20 Vulcans, Mikao said with a shrug. This is the type of job Erza had no problem doing before she turned 15. Oh? Naruto asked, obviously intrigued. When she was 15, Erza became an S-class mage. This type of job would be a walk in the park for her. Her Heaven's Wheel armor, the same armor that she used at the end of your fight with her, is perfect for fighting against multiple enemies, Mikao said with a sigh. It's a bit depressing to know how much she's accomplished when I'm nearly twice her age. The new generation surpasses the older one, Naruto said with a grin. So how much is this job even paying? 200,000 jewels, Mikao answered. It's a pretty good reward for such a simple task. Agreed, Naruto said. From the sounds of it, he would have the next month or two of rent paid up fairly easy. We're here, Mikao whispered as he came to a stop. Naruto looked around the corner and saw a large cave. With the snow blowing around, he could not see too clearly inside of it. Let's see if anyone's home, Naruto said as he slipped his left hand into the right sleeve of his jacket and withdrew a paper bomb from it. He then slipped his right hand into his left sleeve and removed a kunai. He immediately went to work, wrapping the paper bomb around the handle of the kunai. What are you doing? Mikao asked. Without saying a word, Naruto stepped out from behind the corner and threw the kunai as hard as he could. It landed right outside of the cave, and a large white beast that resembled a monkey came out to take a look. As soon as it reached the kunai, Naruto activated the paper bomb and it exploded. You're one of a kind, Mikao said as he stepped around the corner and watched as 14 Vulcans came out from the cave. We're surrounded, so it was pointless not to hurry, Naruto said as he jerked his thumb back, making Mikao see the 5 Vulcans approaching them from behind. I just heard them before we got here. I'll take them out, Mikao said as he began to walk back to the path that they had taken to get up there. That's fine, Naruto said as he dashed to meet the 14 Vulcans that were before him. Shadow Clone Jutsu, he whispered, forming a shadow clone next to him. As he was running, it formed a Rasengan in his right hand and dispelled. He slid to a stop as a Vulcan neared him, and he had to admit that he had underestimated its size. It threw its mammoth-sized punch at him, but he simply sidestepped it before moving forward and connecting the Rasengan with its stomach. It was sent flying back with incredible force. Despite that, he saw that 5 Vulcans had surrounded him immediately afterwards. With their close proximity, it ruled out the Rasengan as a weapon. It was fatal when he used it to the full extent of its power, but it was best used against a single opponent. Taijutsu it is, he said as he dropped into a taijutsu stance. The instant that he assumed the stance, he was attacked twice in quick succession. He was hit in the back by a monstrous hand and then slapped away by another one. He landed uncomfortably in the snow, and he saw that all of the Vulcans were focused on him. One by one, they hit him, pushing him deeper and deeper into the snow. It's a shame I don't have any kind of long-range attacks. If I did, this never would have happened. As the attacks continued, he understood that he could not keep it up. Screw it. I'll stop holding back. Red chakra exploded from his body, sending them flying back. With the crimson cloak of a one-tailed fox, he rose from the snow. His eyes were slit like a fox's, but they were as red as blood. His stance was not longer that of a man. He stood on his legs and his hands as though he was an animal. I have to keep my anger under control. I have control of this form, but there's no way I can control my two-tailed state completely yet. It's a slippery slope when I get more than one tail. Naruto moved forward with incredible speed and head-butted one of the Vulcans with such force that it knocked it clean off the mountain. His tail spun in a circle in the way only a tail of pure energy could. It knocked all of the Vulcans around them onto their backs. With the monsters downed, his tail wrapped around one of them and hurled it off the mountainside as though it was a small rock. It's definitely a powerful form. I hate relying on its power though. Exhaling, Naruto got to work on the remaining 10 Vulcans. Unlike the others, he did not simply hurl them off of the mountain. Instead, he killed them by causing physical damage, like snapped necks, broken ribs, and severed spinal cords. Just as he killed the final one, Mikao came in sight, and his eyes locked onto Naruto's form. He did not seem as alarmed as Naruto had expected though. Of course, I should have figured you had an ace up your sleeve, Mikao said with a laugh. How am I going to tell everyone that you took out more than me though? Naruto just shook his head as the fox cloak dissipated and he fell to his knees. Looking at his coat, he sighed. It had become ripped in the fight. Rising to his feet, he touched his left wristband and sealed the coat away. I'm not used to using that, he said with a weak grin. So how did you take yours out? I threw them off of the mountain, Mikao answered as a strand of purple fire came from his right hand. It caught onto Naruto's kunai and tossed it in the air, letting the former ninja catch it. That's some strange fire you've got there, Naruto commented. Says the guy who has that wolf-shaped energy around him when he gets serious? Mikao said with a grin. No, Naruto said, shaking his head. It wasn't a wolf, it was a fox. Whatever you say, oh great Kitsune, Mikao said with an elegant bow. Don't even start, Naruto said with a groan. He had no idea that he would one day be known as Kitsune of Fairy Tail, much the same way Erza was Titania of Fairy Tail, and Natsu was Salamander of Fairy Tail. Well, that could have gone better, Naruto said as he walked down the main street of Magnolia, headed towards the Fairy Tail base. He and Mikao had just parted ways, and Naruto was 150,000 jewels richer than he had been that morning. It still made him laugh that it was supposed to be a 3-day job, but they had not hunted them down one at a time like most would. Their simplistic approach had made it go by far quicker than expected. Unfortunately, they had gotten in a little trouble over their methods. Someone had tossed a Vulcan far enough away from the mountain that it crashed through the roof of someone's house. It seemed that it truly was impossible for Fairy Tail to accomplish a mission without collateral damage. That did not frustrate Naruto as much as Mikao's insistence that the commission for the job be split 25-75. Naruto hated taking the majority of the commission just on the basis that he did more work. Mikao had invited him along, after all. It was not all that fair in his opinion that he, as the guest, was paid more. Still, he had learned that most in Fairy Tail were stubborn, so he had not tried too hard to dissuade Mikao. Naruto stopped just short of the Fairy Tail doors and lifted his hand chest high with his palm up. First, you have rotation. Chakra began to spin in his hand. Next, you have power. The chakra flow grew stronger. Finally, you combine them. In his hand, he held an imperfect Rasengan, similar to what he had attempted to use on Tsunade when he goaded her into a fight back when they first met. I need to truly master the Rasengan. If I could do that, I could use it almost as quick as I can punch. It's the only option I can see. What else could I do? Something is weighing heavily upon your mind. Naruto turned around and was surprised to see Makarov standing behind him. Come, Makarov said as he began to walk around the building. Let us talk. Though he was confused, Naruto did exactly as instructed. When they reached the back of the building, Makarov spoke. It's loud inside, and it will be until they all leave for the night. We can speak privately back here. Did she tell you about the 9 tails? Naruto asked suddenly. That's the demon within you, Makarov asked. Naruto nodded. I never told poorly Yusuke or you the whole story, so I might as well do it now. On the day I was born, the 9-tailed demon fox attacked my village. Its power was so great that it could cause tsunamis and earthquakes with a flick of its tails. Many of the shinobi of my village tried to fight it, but it was a losing battle until he came to the battlefield. Who is that? Makarov asked patiently. He was the fourth man to lead our village, the fourth Hokage. It was said he was one of the greatest shinobi ever born, and he did the unthinkable. He defeated the Nine Tails, Naruto said quietly. The third Hokage, the man revered as the god of shinobi, told everyone that the Nine Tails had been killed, but the truth is that it was sealed inside of me. A number of people found out before it was made a secret though, and most of those people weren't very nice to me growing up. They viewed you as a scapegoat, Makarov said with a frown. Yeah, they did, Naruto said with a nod. But here's the thing. I didn't even know that it was sealed inside of me until I was 12. I wasn't supposed to find out the way I did either. I was tricked by someone I trusted. With that, Naruto began to tell the old mage the basics about his life from the Mizuki incident to the mission to rescue Gaara from the Akatsuki. No less than an hour and a half passed as he told the story, but the time never affected either of them. After I learned that I was in a new world, it terrified me, but I felt relieved too. Akatsuki can't come after me anymore, so it seems like it doesn't matter that it's inside my anymore. But then I was forced to use some of its power in the latest job. I can see how that would worry you, Makarov said, still caught off guard by the realization that Naruto could use the Nine Tails' power at will, even if only to an extent. It reminded me of something that worries me, Naruto said with a frown. The seal that holds back the Nine Tails is gradually weakening. It's such a gradual process that I'll be safe for a while, but if I don't figure out how to strengthen the seal, I'll be in trouble. Leave needless worries for another time, Makarov said quietly. You'll figure out a way. You are a smart boy. Naruto chuckled, not used to that compliment. He grew seriously quickly afterwards though. How am I to become stronger than I currently am though? I cannot continue to rely on its power. You will never obtain the power you seek if that is what drives you, Makarov said as he looked at Naruto carefully. Power does not come from the desire to be independent of others. It comes from the desire to protect others. Memories of Hiruzen Sarutobi and Haku suddenly flashed to mind. They had said similar things. It seemed that he had forgotten all about it until his new leader said something. I think I understand, Master Makarov, Naruto said as he took a deep breath. I think I know what I need to do now. That's good to hear, Makarov said as he turned away from Naruto. Remember something about Fairy Tail. We are not just a group of mages that work together. We are a family. If you ever need help, you can always ask. I will, Naruto promised. Do fairies really have tails? Do they even exist? Like them, this place is an eternal mystery and never-ending adventure, Makarov said suddenly, confusing Naruto. That is the meaning of our name, Fairy Tail. I wouldn't want you to go without knowing the name. After all, you've become a credit to our name since you've arrived in our lives. With that, Makarov walked away. His words would stay with Naruto for the rest of his life, however. 6. Natsu and Lucy. It was a normal day for the mages of Fairy Tail. As usual, Naruto Uzumaki was sitting at the bar with Kana Alberona. A bottle of beer was in his hand, though no one seemed to notice that he only drank a sip at a time. It was the 2nd of July, meaning that Naruto had officially been a member of Fairy Tail for a month and a day. So Naruto, when are you taking your first solo job? Kana asked curiously. Now that you've been in Fairy Tail for over a month, you can probably handle doing jobs on your own. I probably could, Naruto agreed as he took a bigger drink than normal. I'll hold off on going on another job though. I don't need the money right now. You'd be amazed how little it costs to eat ramen for every meal. That can't be healthy for you, Kana commented. And that is? Naruto asked, gesturing to the empty barrel of alcohol next to her. I have 6 years of practice. I can handle it, she said with a frown. I have at least 13 years of practice eating ramen almost exclusively, Naruto said with a grin. You're hopeless, Kana said with a sigh. Thanks, Naruto said with a laugh. I do try my best. He looked around momentarily, and did not see Makarov around anywhere, so he looked to his friend and spoke very quietly. Has she made any progress yet? Kana looked around for Makarov as well before she answered him. Levi said she's getting closer. The notes on how you make them is speeding the progress up a bit, but she's trying to be careful. You made us promise to keep it a secret from everyone after all. Naruto nodded, pleased that she had kept it a secret thus far. Unbeknownst to all but those three, Naruto had agreed to let Levi McGarden attempt to recreate paper bombs in a manner that normal mages could use them. He had given the stipulation that Levi could tell no one how to create them without his approval, and only Levi and Kana were allowed to use them after they were created. His decision had been largely due to the fact that he wanted to protect his friends. Coincidentally, he had only talked to Levi once since joining Fairy Tail, but he did not have to consider he a friend to still entrust her with the task of recreating paper bombs. She was a comrade and a friend of a friend. Plus, she was the only one that Kana knew who could possibly recreate them. Suddenly, the doors opened, alerting everyone to a new arrival. A young man of average height with spiky pink hair and black eyes entered the building. He wore a black waistcoat with gold trimming over his chest, short white trousers that went down to his knees, a wide black wristband on his left wrist, a pair of sandals, and a white scarf that resembled scales. He did not have a shirt on, and Naruto could see his fairy tale stamp on his right arm just below the shoulder. Behind him was a young woman with brown eyes and blonde hair that was tied by ribbons of a variety of colors in a singular bunch to the right side of her head. She wore a blue and white sleeveless shirt, wristbands, a blue skirt with a whip and some keys attached to it, and a pair of knee-high black high-heeled shoes. As far as he could see, she did not have a fairy tale stamp on her, though he did not automatically assume she was not a member. It was not unheard of for a girl to have her stamp on one of her thighs or even on her back. Only after they were inside did Naruto notice a small blue cat that was standing upright on its back 2 feet. "I'm back." "Welcome back, Natsu and Happy," Mary-Jane said as she looked over at them. "Natsu is the one that they told me about. They say he can eat fire by transforming his lungs into that of a dragon's." "You overdid it again," one of the mages at a table said. "I read about the Harjin incident in the newspaper." Suddenly, the one named Natsu kicked the speaker in the face. "Bastard, that info you gave me about Salamander was fake," he said with a very annoyed expression on his face. "Now that Natsu is back, the place might get torn apart," Mary-Jane said with a hint of humor in her eyes. As if on cue, the various mages, apart from Naruto, Kana, and Mary-Jane, began to fight. "Wow, so this is fairy tale," the blonde at the doors said. "Hey, did you say Natsu is back?" Gray said, suddenly running through the doors in just his boxers. "Let's finish our fight from last time." "Gray, have you been walking around like that?" Kana asked with a raised eyebrow. "Shit!" Gray just noticed his state of undress at the brunette's words. "Why is Naruto the only guy around who isn't undignified?" she asked with a sigh. Naruto nearly laughed at that, but his attention went to Elfman as he entered and stood behind the blonde at the door. "Yapping in the middle of the day, you're not kids, you know," Elfman said, shaking his head. "Go fight and prove your manhood." "Out of the way!" Natsu and Gray shouted together as the both punched him away. Before long, Locke became involved in the fight. Mary-Jane was knocked unconscious by a beer bottle, and part of the bar was damaged right next to Kana. "This ends here," Kana said as she withdrew her cards. "You're right," Naruto said as he rose to his hands and his hands were surrounded by blue chakra. "I've had it," Gray said as he put his hands in position to use his ice-make powers. "Oh yeah!" Elfman exclaimed as his right arm appeared to be surrounded by rock. "What a troublesome bunch," Locke said with a sigh as he prepared his ring magic. "Come get me!" Natsu yelled as his hands caught on fire. "They're going to fight with magic?" the blonde newcomer asked in shock. "Oh, this is getting intense," Mary-Jane said with a small little chuckle. "Cut it out, you fools," a huge black monster exclaimed as it appeared out of nowhere. Immediately, everyone but Naruto and Natsu cut out their magic. "Oh, I didn't notice you around, Master," Mary-Jane said, immediately causing Naruto to cut off his chakra and take his seat. "Ha! You guys are a bunch of scaredy cats. This match is my win," Natsu exclaimed shortly before he was stepped on. "A newcomer?" Makarov in his giant form asked, looking to the blonde girl that had showed up with Natsu. "Yes," she answered nervously. Immediately, Makarov shrunk down to his normal form. "Nice to meet you. I'm the master of fairy tale, Makarov." Before anyone could say anything else, Makarov jumped off the ground and landed on the railing of the second color. "You've done it again, fools," he said in annoyance. He held up a large stack of paper in his hand. "Look at all the complaints I've received from the council." His eyes went to Gray. "Gray, good job on sweeping out the smuggling organization. But you walked around town naked afterwards. Then, you ran away after stealing some underwear that had been hung to dry. Would it have been better if I just kept walking around naked?" Gray muttered. Then his eyes went to Elfman. "Elfman, you had a mission to escort a VIP, but you assaulted him during the mission." "He said men are all about education," Elfman said in defense. "Kana Alberona, you drank 15 barrels of alcohol during a mission and charged it to the council," Makarov said, looking at the card magic user. She just shrugged. "Locke, you flirted with a council member's daughter, and a certain talent agency charged us for damage compensation too," Makarov said with a sigh, but Locke just grinned. "Naruto, you threw a Vulcan off a mountain and through the roof of someone's house," Makarov said exasperated. "Mikao must have told him I was responsible. Well, I probably did do it, so that's fine. Natsu, you destroyed the demon thief family, but you also destroyed 7 other houses, leveled a historical clock tower in Tully Village, burned down a church at Frisia, damaged parts of Lupnus Castle, and destroyed half of Harjan's port, Makarov said with a frown. And don't even get me started on the rest of you. And Erza says we aren't destructive? Naruto muttered, making Kana suppress a laugh. Guys, the council is angry at me all the time, but you can forget about the council, Makarov said as he set the papers on fire and threw them at Natsu, who ate them. Listen up. The power to overcome reason is born from reasoning. Magic is not a miracle. When the spirit flows within us and the spirit flow in nature connects, they will form an embodiment for the first time. You will need a strong mentality and a lot of concentration for that. I mean, pouring all of your soul into whatever you do is magic. If you keep worrying about the watchful eyes of the council, your magic will never prosper. Don't fear the fools of the council. Do whatever you think is right. That's the way of the fairy tale mages. The atmosphere immediately grew light and happy at that. So you want it there? Mary Jane asked. Yep, Lucy answered with her hand on the bar. A pink fairy tale stamp was placed on the back of her right hand at that. It had been about half an hour since Natsu and Lucy had arrived, and things were mostly back to normal already. Naturally, things never stayed normal long. So who's the blonde guy? Natsu asked, looking at Elfman. Naruto sighed as the pink-haired boy did not even try to be quiet about it. That's our new man, Naruto Uzumaki. He's a real man. He took 2 mages down by himself in his first job and then took down 15 Vulcans by himself earlier this week. If that's not man enough, he fought Erza last time she stopped by. His manliness knows no bounds. He did better than you, Gray, or Loke, Elfman said with a grin. Why do I get the feeling that this is bad? New guy, let's fight! Natsu exclaimed. Master, I don't think that's a good idea, Mary Jane said with a frown. That would be destructive. Natsu will be Natsu, Makarov said with a sigh. There's no stopping him if he wants to fight. It's Naruto, not new guy, he said with a frown. And why would I want to fight you? If you lost to Erza without doing as well as I did, then you can't be as strong as I am. Now I'm fired up. Natsu exclaimed as his hands were surrounded by fire. I guess I don't have a choice, Naruto said with a sigh. He liked fighting against strong opponents, but he did not think that the pink-haired boy would be a challenge. Let's go out back. I'm not about to fight a fire user inside a wooden building. Is it safe for them to fight? Lucy asked Mary Jane as Natsu and Naruto headed to the doors. I saw Natsu fight in Harjan. He's strong. Naruto isn't just strong. Unless you've seen him fight before, you're at a disadvantage going up against him, Kana interrupted. Now, let's go and see them fight. As with the Naruto and Erza fight, all of the present mages went to watch. Let's do this, Natsu said as his hands caught fire, and he dashed forward. Fire Dragon's Iron Fist. His flaming right fist slammed into Naruto, only for him to be replaced with a log. I don't think Master Makarov said we could start yet, Naruto said a dozen yards behind him. You may begin, Makarov said in amusement. Right, Natsu said as he suddenly used Fire Dragon's Claw to propel him to Naruto, where he followed up with his Fire Dragon's Iron Fist again. As with the last time, Naruto was replaced with a log. What kind of magic is that? Lucy asked, surprised by the way he kept switching with logs. That's what he calls substitution. Just wait until he substitutes himself with another person, Kana said with a grin. Damn you! Natsu said, clearly infuriated. He slammed his fists together and began to inhale. Suddenly, he put both hands, balled and loose fists, in front of his mouth and expelled a powerful fireball at Naruto, who just frowned. I don't think he escaped my fire dragon's roar, Natsu said with a grin. That grin did not last long though. As soon as the flames cleared away, Naruto was standing still with his arms crossed. His one-tailed fox cloak was active. The last time I used this to protect myself from a fire blast was during my fight with Sasuke at the Valley of the End, wasn't it? He shook his head at the memory. Are you done? What in the world is that? Kana asked with a frown. I told you about it, didn't I? Mikao asked as he watched with a grin. That's the ace he keeps up his sleeve. Makarov simply watched on in interest. It was the first time that he had ever seen Naruto use the Nine-Tails chakra. My turn, Naruto said as he closed the distance and punched Natsu in the stomach. The single hit threw Natsu back 20 yards. As soon as Natsu hit the ground, Naruto's chakra cloak dissipated. He had not wanted to use it against a comrade, even in a fight like that. However, he had put very little strength into his punch. Of course, he could shatter rock with his punches while he was in that state, so pulling his punches was necessary when fighting a comrade like that. Maybe I'll use it on Erza next time we fight. I'm sure she can take it. They say she has some pretty strong defensive armor. Breaking away from that though, he walked up to Lucy and offered his hand out. Welcome to Fairy Tail, he said with a smile. She was caught off guard by his sudden actions, but she took his hand and shook it. Thanks, she said. Taking her hand away from his, she could not help but ask a question or two. How long have you been in Fairy Tail? I can't say I've ever heard of you. And what kind of magic did you use? A month, Naruto said before he started to walk away. And you'll have to be more specific. I use 2 types, not counting the punch. The Kitsune of Fairy Tail. I can understand why you called him that in your story, Gray said, glancing at Mikao. In that form, he might have stood a chance against Erza. I doubt it, Makarov said as he began to walk off. Naruto's strong, but Erza became an S-class mage when she was his age. Even if he could overpower her, he lacks her experience. Who is Erza? Lucy asked. She did not get her answer that day. 7. The strongest team. Naruto sighed as looked at the bar in front of him. 5 kunai were lying flat on top of the bar's surface, and they were most certainly a source of annoyance for Naruto. He had been all too happy to use kunai freely in the time that he had been in Fairy Tail, and it had caused problems. His supply of kunai was at a grand total of 5. Contrary to what he had first thought, kunai were simply not made or sold in Fury. At least, ones with enough quality to cut through a sheet of paper without dulling were not made or sold in Fury. They were not a weapon that was used by anyone other than himself. Sure, he could probably pay someone to make him some kunai, but even if he could, they would be of far less quality than the kunai he was used to using. He desperately wished that he had taken better care of the ones he had before then, but they were all either broken or lost. The only good news was that he still had a little more than 2 dozen shuriken and a few fuma shuriken. Still, kunai were not just a weapon to be thrown. He used them mostly in physical combat, which he could not do with his shuriken. Luckily, he had realized how much of a bind he was in a week earlier, which just so happened to be the day after he fought Natsu. His problem was clearly that he no longer had a close-range weapon, so he had asked around to get a good idea as to what weapon he could replace it with. In the end, he had gotten a jien, which was a double-edged straight sword that was wielded one-handed. The entire sword was 2.5 feet long, and he had immediately worked on learning how to use it. He would have asked Erza for some training since she was skilled with swords, but she was not around. He found a teacher in the end though. It turned out that Great Fullbuster had skill with swords as well, though he only used swords made of ice, and the swords were more like traditional long swords. Still, he learned best by doing, so what he had learned thus far had come through sparring. Naturally, Naruto had no intention of using his sword in combat for a while. He had been training for a week with it, and he was mostly self-taught. The odds of him doing anything good with it at that point were unlikely. The sound of Gray and Natsu talking suddenly caught Naruto's attention. They started arguing after Lucy denied playing the big part in her most recent job, which had been about destroying a book called Daybreak. It seemed that Natsu wanted to become a team with her. Things going as they normally did, Locke had shopped up and invited Lucy to be in a team with him for the night. The sheer corniness of the wording that Locke used made Naruto sigh and shake his head. Still, something odd happened after that. Locke ran the other way after he saw Lucy's keys and called her a celestial spirit mage. What is a celestial spirit mage in the first place? I think the old woman mentioned it in her lessons, but I wasn't too attentive. Suddenly, the doors swung open and Naruto saw Locke enter the guild building again. Breathing heavily, he said, "Erza is back." Sighing, Naruto touched the seal on his left wristband and sealed away his kunai. He then noticed that Natsu and Gray were acting like buddies for some strange reason. Realization dawned on him immediately. They must be scared of her. It makes sense. The doors swung open again just after Locke took a seat and Erza Scarlet walked through into the room with a massive horn held up by her right hand. "I'm back," she said, making Naruto roll his eyes. It was pretty obvious that she was back. Is Master present at the moment? At that, Naruto remembered that Makarov had told him that morning that he had a meeting to go to, but Mary Jane beat him to the punch. "Welcome back," Mary Jane said cheerfully. "Master is attending the regular meeting." "I see," Erza said with a frown as she set the horn down. "Erza, what is that humongous thing?" one of the mages suddenly asked. "Oh, you mean this?" Erza asked as she gestured to the horn. "The local townspeople decorated the horn of the demon that I subdued. It was so pretty that I brought it back as a souvenir." Naruto held back a groan at that. She said it so casually that saying she bought it at the store would have felt more appropriate. "Well, this is an S-class mage." "Will it be a nuisance?" Erza asked, looking at the mage with a curious expression. He immediately shook his head in response. "Anyways, I heard you've been causing trouble again. Even if Master forgives you, I won't." "Who is she?" Lucy asked quietly, though Naruto heard her clearly. "Kana, that's an inappropriate drinking posture," Erza said, drawing Naruto's attention to the way his friend was drinking a barrel of alcohol. "Vegeta, if you want to dance, go outside. Wakaba, your cigarette butts are all over the floor. Nab, are you still hanging around the request board? Pick a job already. You guys give me so much trouble, but I won't say anything for today. Naruto wanted to laugh at her antics, but he did not want to draw her attention. By the way, are Natsu and Gray here? She suddenly asked. Hey Erza. We're being good to each other as always, Gray said nervously with an arm around Natsu's neck. Ah, and Natsu said, just as nervously. Now he's like that talking cat of his. Unlike most people, Naruto had never been surprised that Natsu had a talking cat. He was used to talking animals from his days as a ninja. I see best friends do fight once in a while, but I do rather seeing you two being good to each other like that all the time, Erza said. I'm happy to see that both of you are doing great. Naruto turned on his barstool and looked at the three as they were talking. I actually have a favor to ask both of you. I heard something troubling at work. Usually I would consult Master about this, but it is too urgent to wait. I need your help. You'll come with me, right? Erza asked. Immediately, everyone was struck speechless by Erza's request, but the two boys nodded. I'll tell you the details on the way. We'll leave tomorrow, so be prepared, Erza said as she began to walk back to the doors. Those three together it might very well be the strongest team in Fairy Tail, Mira Jane said quietly. You jinxed it, Naruto said with a sigh as Erza came to a stop and looked back at the bar. I didn't see you there, Naruto, Erza said with a smile. I'd like you to come too. If I do this you owe me, Naruto said with a smile. Okay, Erza said as she picked her horn up and walked away. Naruto, Natsu, and Gray all exchanged looks at that point. Natsu had a rivalry of sorts against both of them, while Naruto and Gray got along well. Well, this will be interesting. Naruto sighed as he looked on at Natsu and Gray arguing. Why does she even need our help? Natsu asked annoyed. How would I know? Besides, if she needs help, you'll just get in the way, Gray said. Then why don't you just leave me out of it? I don't want to go, Natsu retorted. Fine, then stay. Erza will only kill you afterwards, Gray replied. Geez, just shut up and stop arguing, Lucy yelled at them. Why are you even here in the first place? Natsu asked with a frown. Mira asked her to come, Naruto said as he glanced at the blonde next to him. Though she probably wanted to come anyways. Happy agreed. Shut up you stupid cat, Lucy said as she shook her head. You got told, Naruto said as he patted Happy on the top of his head. Sorry to keep you waiting, Erza said bringing their attention to the armored mage. She had a massive stack of luggage behind her that made everyone widen their eyes comically. You're just on time, Naruto said as he walked over to her. Want me to take care of the luggage for you? He showed her one of his wristbands as he said that. Go ahead. I've heard that you can seal away objects in a large number of pocket dimensions with those runes, Erza said before turning her attention to Lucy. I believe I saw you in the guild yesterday. I don't believe we've met. I'm Lucy, she said as she stood up and actually gave a bow. Mary Jane asked me to accompany you. I'm Erza. It's nice to meet you. I believe I heard about you yesterday. You're the new member that defeated a guerrilla mercenary, very promising, Erza said with a nod. For once, Lucy decided not to deny it. This mission might be risky, but you should be able to handle it if you did so well on your last job. I don't know what our task is this time, but I'll only go with you on one condition, Natsu said, surprising the armored mage. Say it, she said, intrigued. When we return, fight with me. I'm different from back then, Natsu said seriously. You'll just lose, Naruto interjected. Didn't you learn when you challenged me? I beat you with a single hit, and Erza's even stronger than I am. Erza blinked in surprise. You two fought? Yeah, Natsu said, looking away. This guy, he's a monster. He was surrounded by this red energy that looked kind of like a fox. My fire didn't even affect him. He didn't use it against me, Erza said before she looked at Naruto. I'm surprised to hear you held back against me. I can't use that form against an ally. It was different against Natsu since I couldn't dodge his attack. I'm durable in that form. I could probably shatter your armor with a single hit in that form too, Naruto said as he rolled up the scroll that contained Erza's luggage and sealed it away in his left wristband. Erza frowned, but she looked to Natsu and nodded. You've changed since we last fought, so I'll accept your request. We'll see how much you've grown. She then looked at Gray. Do you wish to fight me too? No, Gray said, shaking his head fiercely. Very well, she said as she faced Naruto again. We'll need a rematch one day, but that's not what I wish to speak of right now. Tell me something. What is it that I will owe you? I'm learning to use a sword, Naruto answered. I could use someone who knows more about it than I do to give me some pointers. Erza simply smiled before she led them to the train. On the train, the seats were grouped in two. The seats were more like benches though, which meant that Natsu and Gray were sitting on one seat with Happy between them while Lucy and Erza sat together. Naruto was sitting across from them by himself. He was not about to complain though. He was sitting sideways with his back against the wall, and his legs lying across the seat. His attention suddenly went to Natsu as he traded seats with Erza. Apparently, he had motion sickness, which Erza dealt with by knocking him out. Hey Erza, what kind of magic do you use? I've only ever seen Natsu and Naruto's magic, Lucy suddenly said. It's beautiful, Happy said, clearly happy by the memories it brought. It is, Naruto said reverently, earning an odd look from Erza. It's nothing special, Erza said dismissively. I think Gray's magic is more beautiful. As if on cue, Gray held his left hand out and struck his right fist down on it. Frost gathered around his hand before he opened his fist and removed it. In its place was an ice sculpture of the fairy tale emblem. It's ice magic, Gray said simply. Realization dawned in Lucy's eyes. He's fire and you're ice. No wonder you don't get along. Happy said. I never thought of that, Erza commented. I did. Mira came to the same conclusion. Gray shrugged. Anyways, what's going on? You asking for help doesn't happen often at all. Let me explain, Erza said as she grew thoughtful. I was on my way back from work when I stopped by a bar where mages gather. A few individuals there caught my attention. They spoke of something called Lullaby and how they were having trouble taking possession of it because it was sealed. Is it some kind of sleep magic? Naruto asked with a frown. I don't know, Erza said with a frown. But since it is sealed, it probably contains some powerful magic. I don't get it. So you came across some folks who wanted to break the seal of some unknown magic. Maybe that's just their job, nothing special about it, Gray said. That's what I told myself as well, so I didn't give it another though. And then, I remembered a name that they mentioned, Erigor. He is the ace of Eisenwald, a dark guild. He is known as the Grim Reaper. It's a nickname he earned because he only does assassination requests. The council prohibits the acceptance of assassination requests, but Eisenwald was too greedy to deny the opportunity for more money. They were ousted from the Mage Guild League 6 years ago, and have been a dark guild ever since. Weren't they punished too? Lucy asked with a frown. Yeah, their master was arrested and they were ordered to disband. However, they, like most dark guilds, just ignored the order and continued operating. If only I had remembered the name Erigor back at the bar, I could have learned more, Erza said with a sigh as the train came to a stop and they began to get off of it. If it were just a few guys, you could handle them on your own. An entire guild, on the other hand, Gray said as they got off at the train station. They got a hold of the magic called Lullaby, so they must be plotting something. I do not believe that we can overlook this matter, so I came for your help. We're going to take down Eisenwald, Erza said firmly. I'm in need of a workout, Naruto said with a grin. It does sound interesting, Gray said, clearly excited. Lucy, on the other hand, was sweating at the knowledge of what she had gotten herself into. So do you know where Eisenwald is? Gray asked. No, Erza admitted. We came to this town for that information. Where's Natsu? Lucy asked, drawing everyone's attention to the lack of the dragon slayer. Happy, shouldn't you have noticed that first? Naruto asked with a frown. Happy said sadly. Looking back, they saw that the train had already taken off. This is my fault. I got caught up with talking. Hit me, will you? Erza said, overreacting a bit in Naruto's opinion. Still, he was not about to pass up a good opportunity. He hit her on the top of the head with his fist, using just enough force that she could feel it. He was not about to use enough to hurt her. They were comrades, after all. Let's go stop the train, Naruto said once he got her attention. Good idea, Erza said as she hit her fist against her open hand. Happy, go and find the emergency brake lever for the train while we go to get Natsu. Happy said as he grew wings and flew off. He can fly? Naruto asked under his breath. I can ignore the talking, but how can a cat fly? He broke from his thoughts as he saw that they had already run off without him. By the time he reached them, they were getting in a magic four-wheeled vehicle with Erza taking the driver's seat. What have I got myself into? He muttered as he jumped through one of its open windows and landed inside next to Lucy. They immediately took off after the train as it was slowing down. It had eventually come to a complete stop before taking off again. As soon as it took off again, Natsu jumped through a window and was caught by Gray. Once they had Natsu, Erza came to a stop and everyone got out. You guys are horrible, Natsu said once they were out of the vehicle. How could you leave me behind? I apologize, Erza said sincerely. I'm sorry, Lucy said, also sincere. Whatever, Naruto and Gray muttered. I'm happy that you're safe, Erza said as she hugged him, inadvertently slamming his face into her armor. Breaking away from her, Natsu said, How am I safe? A weirdo tried to pick a fight with me. What was it, Eisenwald? Erza asked, surprised. Suddenly, she punched Natsu. Eisenwald is what we're after. How could you let them get away? This is the first I've heard of it, Natsu muttered. Why weren't you listening to my story? Erza demanded. She knows she knocked him out before she told us, right? Naruto whispered, to which Gray nodded his head. Just checking. If he's on the rein, we need to chase him, Erza said as she walked to the front of the magic vehicle and attached the wristband that powered it to her right arm. What did he look like? Nothing special, but he carried an odd flute with him. It had a skull on it that had 3 eyes, Natsu said, shaking his head. That's weird, Naruto said. No, I thought it was a made-up story. This can't be real, Lucy said, looking terrified. What's wrong? Naruto asked. If that flute is what I think it is the flute known as Lullaby. It's said to have a 3-eyed skull on the end of it, she said, becoming even more fearful. What's so bad about it? Gray asked. It's a cursed flute. It plays a song of eternal sleep, a song of death, she answered. You're saying that it's black magic capable of killing anyone who hears it? Erza asked, alarmed. That's exactly right, Lucy said, looking down. I never thought it was real, so it never crossed my mind until Natsu mentioned what it looked like. We have to go, Naruto said, growing serious. It's up to us to catch up with Eisenwald before their leader, this Erigor, can play the flute. If we don't, many will die. Let's go then, Erza said as she took the driver's seat and everyone else got into the magic 4-wheeled vehicle. Their mission had just grown even more important. 8. Eisenwald. Naruto and the other fairy tale mages were standing outside of Ashibana Station, where people were being refused entry. It seemed that Eisenwald was inside and some soldiers had gone in after them, but against an entire mage guild, especially a dark guild, humans without magic did not stand a chance. Let's go in and deal with them, Erza said as she walked up to one of the train station employees that were not allowing anyone in. We're from Fairy Tale. If the station has been overrun by the mages we believe it has been, then the soldiers won't be enough. Let us pass and we can handle it. Naturally, they let her pass. It's probably because you don't mess with a girl wearing armor, especially when she's a mage. He broke away from his thoughts as they entered the station. After a few minutes, they came to a large room where the mages of Eisenwald were clearly waiting for them. I think I smell a trap. I'm sure Erza has realized it already too. I knew you'd come, Fairy Tale, Erigor said as he stood high above the other members of his guild. They're all here, Lucy said in shock. We've been waiting for you. You're Erigor, aren't you? Erza asked with a frown. That's the armored girl from the other day that explains how they found out about our plans, one of the Eisenwald mages said. Naturally, the scythe-wielding mage replied. What do you intend to do? Erza demanded. Depending on your answer, I might have to make you pay for it. We just want to fool around, Erigor said casually. We've got no job, so we're really bored. Naturally, none of the fairy tale mages believed him, especially after his subordinates started laughing. Don't you understand what they have inside a train station? He asked as he began to fly. Everyone looked shocked when he flew by a loudspeaker. Damn it, they're going to broadcast it, Gray said as he brought his hands together in preparation for his ice-make abilities. Lucy, hurry up and wake him up, Naruto said as he glanced at the unconscious Natsu. She was still somewhat upset about Happy's statement that he was done because she was the third form of transportation that he had taken back to back. If we broadcast it, everyone in Down will hear the melody of death, Erigor said with a sinister smile. That's indiscriminate mass murder, Erza yelled. They must know a counter for it. If they play it here, their entire guild will hear it as well. That would kill them as well, so maybe it's possible to avoid it by using earplugs on something. How are we going to get everyone some earplugs though? We are simply cleaning up those fools who live their lives enjoying their rights, not knowing that there are people who have lost their rights, Erigor said menacingly. Living a life oblivious to the unfairness of the world is a sin, so the Grim Reaper must punish them. You think you know unfairness, Naruto said darkly as he stepped out in front of his comrades. You know nothing of unfairness or pain. You have no idea what despair truly means. You will be stopped, one way or another, even if I have to completely destroy you to do so. Everyone looked at Naruto at that, even Erigor. We shall see if you can stop me, but I doubt it, Erigor said as he made his escape from the room. Destroy the flies. What a pity for you flies, one of the Eisenwald mages said as he slammed his hands to the ground. Shadows suddenly shot from him towards them. That's weird, he kind of looks like a Nara, and he can even use shadows. Naruto did a back flip away from the attack just as Natsu started to stand up. The shadow turned into a claw and tried to attack Lucy, but Natsu cut it in half with his iron fist of the fire dragon before it could hit her. That's the bastard that attacked me on the train, Natsu said with a grin. Now we can fight on solid ground. Natsu, now is not the time, Erza said suddenly. I want you and Gray to go after Erigor. Together you have the power to handle the Grim Reaper. Naruto, Lucy, and I will handle these guys. Though either of them liked it, Natsu and Gray took off after Erigor. The shadow user disappeared in his shadows immediately, and another mage of Eisenwald went after them as well. What can two girls do? Both of them are pretty gorgeous. It's too bad that we have to kill them, one of the Eisenwald mages said. How about we catch and sell them? Another Eisenwald mage added. Wait until we get to see the fairy strip show, a third Eisenwald mage said. How despicable, Erza said as she held out her right fist. Did they just say what I think they said? Naruto asked as killing intent began to roll off of him, surprising Erza and Lucy. Saying such a thing to my comrades in front of me, that's a bad idea. Agreed, Erza said as a sword appeared in her right hand. A sword just appeared in her hand. It must be a magic sword, Lucy said in surprise. That's not so rare. We have magic swords of our own. We'll just strip that armor off of you. The first two Eisenwald mages to speak did not annoy Naruto in the slightest. The last one, however, set him off. Naruto appeared in front of him in the blink of an eye with a Rasengan in his right hand. He slammed it into the man's stomach and sent him flying against the wall, where he was knocked out. Fairy tale mages do not kill their foes. I can't say I like that rule, but I'll follow it, even if they're worthless pieces of shit like him. The Eisenwald mages around him collapsed immediately afterwards, and Naruto looked over his shoulder. Erza was standing behind him with her sword in hand. It was easy to see what happened, seeing as how the men around him had shallow sword cuts on them. Let's see how you like long-range magic. Suddenly, a ball of magic shot at him. He had no plans of dodging it since Erza was directly behind him, but his plans quickly changed. I can handle it, she said calmly. Naruto did a backflip, landing 10 feet behind her. He landed just in time to see her equip a spear and knock it back at the mage. Immediately after that, her spear disappeared and she equipped 2 swords. She began to move and with incredible speed, cutting down her enemies. An axe soon replaced her swords. How is she doing that? Lucy asked in shock. That's equip magic, Naruto said as he kept his attention on the enemy. She stores weapons and armor in a pocket dimension and can switch them at amazing speed. Most mages can't do it that fast. Doing it in battle when your emotions are at an all-time high, it's an impressive feat. There's still so many of them left, Lucy said. Oh, she's going to do it, Naruto said as he took a step back. Her switching weapons is nothing. What you're about to see, that's the true strength of her magic. Happy agreed. So, she's using her Heaven's Wheel armor, Naruto said when her armor was revealed. Her specific equip magic is called the Knight. She switches into magic sets of armor that boost her powers. Heaven's Wheel armor lets her control a large number of swords, like that. Circle sword, Erza called out as she sent a dozen or so swords flying at her opponents, pinning them to the wall with enough force to knock them out. They don't stand a chance, Naruto said, shaking his head. She is Titania of Fairy Tail, the strongest woman in Fairy Tail. She used too much magic in driving that thing earlier, and yet she still had enough to take them all out. All except one, Erza said as the final one took off running down the hall. Lucy, can you go handle him? Why not Naruto? Lucy asked, but she took off running when Erza shot a dark look at her. Happy followed after her. Why did you send her instead of me? Naruto asked her. Why didn't you help me? Erza asked, though she sounded oddly calm about it. I would have gotten in the way, Naruto said with a frown. I wasn't trying to get you hurt or anything. It's just that I know you could handle them. I know, Erza said with a small smile. I just had to ask. I'm glad you stayed out of the way. It's easier to control that many swords at one time when I don't have to watch out for allies. Besides, your eyes were on me. I can tell when someone's looking at me. You were watching my back to make sure no one could get close, weren't you? Partners watch each other's backs, Naruto said simply. And that's why I want you to come with me. Natsu and Gray are partners, even if they only act like it when they see me, and Lucy has partners of her own. Let's just say that even I need someone who can help me out. My magic power is weakened too much to handle Erigor, so I want you with me if we meet up with him. Fair enough, Naruto said. Come with me, Erza said as she looked off to one of the halls. We need to get everyone out from right in front of the station. We can't fail, but it would be foolish to risk their lives on the off chance that Erigor exceeded. Right, Naruto said as he followed her. Before too long, Naruto and Erza reached a balcony that they could see the crowd from. An employee of the train station was on the balcony already, but they just ignored him and Erza took the speakerphone that he held in his hands away from him. If you value your life, leave here immediately. The station is occupied by dark mages. One of them is ready to cast a spell that will kill everyone around here. Evacuate as far away as possible, Erza said into the speakerphone as clearly as possible. Immediately, everyone ran the other way at the news in fear. Hey, why are you making people panic? One of the employees of the train station asked. It's better that they panic than die, Naruto said. I spoke the truth, Erza said as she nodded. Of course, we will do our best to prevent it, but we can't guarantee anyone's safety, even yours. Please evacuate as well. As soon as they started to leave, Naruto frowned. The wind had suddenly started to pick up for some strange reason. After a few minutes, he looked over his shoulder and saw that there was a wall of wind behind him and Erza. It seemed to be rotating around the train station. Well, if it isn't two flies outside, Erigor suddenly said as he floated about 15 feet in the air, diagonally, above them. I wanted to fight you, Titania of Fairy Tale, but I don't have the time to do that now. He sent a blast of wind that hit them both and threw them through the wall of wind. What is this? Erza asked with a frown. Don't even try to go through my wall of wind, Erigor said from the other side. You can only enter it from the outside with harm. If you try it as it is, you'll just be shredded by the wind. If that happens, I can't very well fight you, now can I? I'd stay and chat some more, but I have to hurry. Some old geezers are waiting on me. With that, he left, and Erza started to try to put her hand through the wall. Naruto grabbed her and pulled her back immediately. If you don't believe him, then believe me, Naruto said as he removed his left wristband and stuck his left hand through the wall. It was knocked out of the wall immediately, and his arm was covered in cuts. What are you doing? You shouldn't hurt yourself, Erza said, and it seemed that she was genuinely concerned for him. I think he's going to go after the guild masters at that meeting of theirs. We need to stop him, Naruto said seriously. I'm going to go after him now. Find the others and try to figure out how to get out. Hopefully, I can stall him just long enough for you guys to show up. How are you going to get out? Erza asked skeptically. I'm going to walk through it, Naruto said as red chakra began to leak out of him. It'll hurt like hell, but it's the only option. With that, he touched his thumb to one of his open cuts and drew a seal on the inside of his left arm. He proceeded to seal away his wristbands inside of it. He did not want the seals getting shredded, after all. I hope you find some way to dispel this, he said as he entered his second-tailed state. He took a few deep breaths, trying to maintain control. He could fight off the fox's will in his one-tailed form easily enough, but it took far more effort to control his two-tailed form. His three-tailed form was impossible to use in combat since it took all of his concentration. Still, he had no intention of fighting with the fox's chakra. It simply made him very durable and accelerated his healing rate. With the fox's power filling him, he walked right through the barrier, grimacing as he did. Once he was safely out of it, his allowed one of his tails to disappear. He only exited the form once his wounds were healed. After he had his wristbands back on and the seal written in blood wiped away, Naruto took off running towards Clover Town. He only knew its location on a map, but he was confident that he could reach it in time. He doubted that Erigor could fly as fast or as long as he could run. As it turned out, Naruto was right. He did catch up with Erigor. Just as the Grim Reaper reached the bridge for the railroad tracks that went to Clover Town, Naruto had come near enough to summon a handful of shuriken and throw them at Erigor. They had all been blasted away and Erigor landed on the bridge a little ways away. You got out quickly, Erigor commented. How did you do it? And where is Titania? It's just me, Naruto said as he walked towards him. I'll be more than enough to handle you. Oh yeah? Erigor asked with a grin. He spun his scythe in his hands, sending a blast of wind at Naruto, but it did not even push me back. You caught me off guard last time, but now you can't blast me away, Naruto said as he continued the steady flow of chakra that kept his feet rooted to the ground. Really? Erigor asked as he started sending blast after blast of wind magic. No less than 20 blasts hit Naruto, and he held his position. That was a breeze, Naruto said, frowning at how corny his joke came out. I think I see, Erigor said as he gripped his scythe in both hands firmly. You have some kind of strange magic that allows you to keep your feet firmly planted on the ground. Those wind blasts moved your upper body, but your feet didn't move at all. You're right, Naruto said with a smile. Let's see how strong you really are. With a chakra-enhanced jump, Naruto leapt clear over Erigor's head and did a flip. As he landed, he threw a barrage of shuriken, which Erigor blasted away with his wind magic. The second the wind blast passed, Naruto closed the distance between him and Erigor. Chakra surrounded his hand in an instant, reminiscent of a partial chakra cloak. He slammed his fist into Erigor's stomach, knocking him back with his chakra hammer. A frown made its way to his face when Erigor caught his footing within a few seconds and raised an eyebrow. You get past my defenses and you use the opportunity to hit me with such a weak attack. How stupid are you? So, it wasn't just Erza. The chakra hammer was supposed to amplify the strength of his punches to a similar extent that his chakra cloak did. It was actually similar to Natsu's iron fist of the fire dragon. However, the attack had barely affected Erza when he hit her from behind with it, and Erigor was affected even less. He might as well have used a regular punch. Maybe I missed something. Maybe the reason it's so weak isn't that I'm up against tough opponents. Could it be that I haven't fully figured out how to make it do what I want? He was broken from his thoughts as Erigor attempted to decapitate him with a swing of his scythe. I think I'm going to have to use the fox's chakra again. Damn it, why can't I become strong enough to do this on my own? Naruto did a backflip and landed in a defensive position. He took a deep breath, prepared to draw on the fox's chakra and fight off his will. Don't rely on its chakra. You don't need borrowed power. Relying on it, that's what is keeping you from becoming strong. Face your enemy with your own power. I believe in you. Naruto's eyes widened as the voice that he had never heard before resounded in his head. It was clearly a male voice, but it was not from a memory. He was absolutely sure that he had never heard it before. I think I'm going to have to do this the hard way, Naruto said as he summoned a kunai from his left wristband and a paper bomb from his right wristband. He quickly attached the paper bomb to the kunai and threw it. As soon as Erigor tried to knock it away with some wind magic, Naruto detonated it. With the paper bomb forcing Erigor to lose sight of Naruto, he performed a feat that he had never done before. Naruto emerged from the smoke that resulted from the paper bomb with a large orb of spiraling chakra in his right hand. He had successfully created a giant Rasengan with a single hand. As he emerged from the smoke, he brought his strongest jutsu towards Erigor's stomach with the intention of ending the fight in a single blow. Unfortunately, Erigor had expected Naruto to attack in such a way. He jumped back and swung his scythe down on top of the giant Rasengan. The power of the giant Rasengan exceeded that of Erigor's scythe. The blade of the scythe shattered and the staff part of it broke into 4 pieces. Well, it wasn't all for nothing, at least. Before Naruto could even consider his next attack, Erigor shot a blast of wind from his right hand and sent him flying back. So you have to consciously use your magic to keep your footing. That's why my attack back at the train station knocked you through the wind wall, Erigor said as he tossed part of his staff down in the ravine that the bridge was built over. Between that power of yours and that strange magic ball, you had the potential to be a strong opponent. Too bad you have to die. With that, he hit Naruto with a blast of air that knocked him off the bridge. Chakra hammer! Naruto yelled as he slammed his right fist into Erigor's back. Unlike last time, it sent Erigor flying through the air. So if I increase the amount of chakra I put into my fist, and then compress it, its power increases. I guess the answer has been in the Rasengan the entire time. How did you get behind me? I knocked you off, Erigor asked as he rose to his feet with a frown. You never knocked me off, Naruto said as his hands became covered in visible chakra. You must have illusion magic, Erigor said as he began to move his hands through an intricate set of motions. Let's go with that, Naruto said. He was not about to reveal that he had performed a substitution with a shadow clone before he was hit by Erigor's wind magic. Say goodnight. Stormbringer, Erigor said as he launched an incredibly powerful whirlwind that threw Naruto back, despite the fact that he used chakra to keep his footing. I'm a master of wind magic. You'll never beat me. Naruto slowly rose to his feet. Wow, I'm winded, he said with a grin. It seems I underestimated how durable you are. I will have to show you how powerful I can really be, so I won't hold anything back, Erigor said as he began to fly. Wind began to rush towards him, spinning around him as it came. Eventually, the wind conformed in a way that it was covering his body like a suit of armor would. This is my storm mail. Giant Rasengan, Naruto said as he once again formed his strongest variation of the Rasengan in a single hand. He leapt towards Erigor and slammed it into the mage's stomach, but before his eyes, it deteriorated. Once it was gone, Erigor knocked him away with his hand. How did you do that? Naruto asked as he breathed hard. Your technique is in constant motion. If it comes to a stop, it fades away. Mine works the same way, but mine is simply far stronger than yours, Erigor said. You're pretty cocky, Naruto said as he rose to his feet. I only have one chance to finish this. I'll have to break his storm mail with my next hit. I might be able to do it with my chakra hammer, but I think I have a better idea. Naruto touched the seal on his left wristband and his Jien appeared in his right hand. You aren't serious, are you? Erigor asked with a laugh. A sword won't do anything against my storm mail. Compress my chakra around the sword, Naruto muttered as he felt his chakra flow into the sword and compress around the blade. It started to glow a pale blue at that. Swing it at the enemy and push all the chakra I can through it. Naruto leapt towards Erigor and brought the Jien in a swift horizontal arc. Just before it made contact with the storm mail, he increased the flow of chakra to the sword to approximately 10 times more chakra than the sword had flowing through it initially. As the blade made contact with the storm mail, chakra exploded from it. The explosion of chakra left a relatively large hole in the air-based armor. Using the hole to his advantage, Naruto left a shallow slice across Erigor's chest. The storm mail repaired itself before he could do any more than that, much to his annoyance. That kind of hurt, Erigor said. The mocking tone in his voice made Naruto's eyes narrow in anger. It seemed like that was just no way to get through the armor. There's a way, Naruto said as he did a backflip away. He shifted his stance so that he was holding his sword as though he was going to draw it from his hip. Placed his left hand onto the back of his right hand, and he began to compress the chakra. Thoughts of a day long past surfaced at the sign that his hands formed. I'm going to ask a bonus question now. Write your answer at the bottom of your test. If you get it right, you'll be awarded 10 bonus points, Irika Yumino said as he stood at the front of his classroom at the Ninja Academy. What is the dog hand sign primarily used for? Naruto frowned. It sounded like a trick question to him. Everyone knew that hand signs let a ninja use jutsu. There was no point in specifying a specific one. Naturally, he simply wrote performing ninjutsu as his answer. At the end of class, Irika said, "You may all go except for you, Naruto." Once everyone was gone, Irika sighed and asked, "Why did you put that answer for the bonus question?" "It's true," Naruto exclaimed. "I get bonus points, right?" "No," Irika said, shaking his head. "It wasn't a trick question, and you're the only one who gave an answer like that. The answer is simple. The dog hand sign is primarily used for wind jutsu, just like tiger is for fire jutsu and snake is for earth jutsu. I went over this in class last week." Naruto just shrugged and left the classroom without saying another word. He knew he would never need to know that. "I was stupid," Naruto said with a chuckle as he took his eyes away from the dog hand sign that he had formed unintentionally. "Well, let's see if I can cut that armor with some wind of my own." His eyes narrowed as he concentrated on the compressed chakra that surrounded the blade. With his eyes on Erigor, he shaped the compressed chakra to match with the design of the blade completely. As a result, he made his chakra sharp. He had no idea how close he was to figuring out nature manipulation, but what he figured out instead was a feat in itself. He had created a wind jutsu without understanding nature manipulation. "I don't have a name for this yet, so here we go," Naruto yelled as he swung the blade from where he was standing and pushed the chakra out of the blade forcibly. Suddenly, a blade of wind was released from the blade and hit a shocker Erigor. His storm mail was cut in half, and he was sporting a long slash from his knee to shoulder. Before he could do anything else, Naruto sealed the Jien away inside his wristband and leapt at Erigor. "Chakra hammer!" he yelled as he hit the Grim Reaper in the stomach with his chakra-covered fist. It sent Erigor flying 20 feet away, where he hit the ground and rolled away unconscious. Naruto collapsed to the ground at that point. He was tired, but he had defeated the strongest mage of a dark guild by himself. Looking in the direction opposite of Clover Town, he saw a magic four-wheeler headed his way with Erza driving. She looked tired, even from that distance. "She's probably used too much energy," he said with a smile as he waved at them. In no time, they came to a stop and the rest of his team got out. "I figured you would have flown on ahead with Happy," Naruto said looking at Natsu. "He tried, but I told him that you weren't trying to beat him. You were supposed to stall him," Erza said with a raised eyebrow. "I'm not good at stalling," Naruto said with a grin. "I see that," Erza said as she walked over to him and crouched down. She set her armored hand on top of his head and patted it a few times. "You're getting strong. Not too many in Fairy Tail could single-handedly beat Erigor." "It gives Fairy Tail a bad name when you just barely win though," Grace said with a barely suppressed smile. "Don't forget that I walked through the wind wall, ran her, and then fought Erigor," Naruto said with a grin. "Why didn't you just borrow a magic four-wheeler like we did?" Lucy asked, making Naruto realize that the one they drove there was not the same one that they had rented. "The people of my homeland have a unique power source. It's not the same as the magic power you guys have. That's why my abilities are different than yours," Naruto said with a sigh. "Master told me that it's too different to be used in devices that are powered by normal magic power." "Impressive," Erza said, but the look in her eyes did not strike Naruto as her being impressed. It struck him as her being intrigued. She soon looked away and towards the magic flute that was on the ground a few yards away from Erigor. "Well, we're almost at Clover, so let's go and visit Master. We need to report everything and hand over the flute to Master." As soon as she said that, the magic four-wheeler drove around them and the guy that resembled a Nara grabbed the flute. He then drove off, but not before saying something. "You fools! Now I can carry out our plans." "You left a dark mage alone in the magic four-wheeler?" Naruto asked in disbelief. "Not even I'm that stupid." Everyone, even Natsu and Erza, looked embarrassed at that. "We need to go after him now," Naruto said seriously. "Come on. We can't let him play Lullaby where the old man can hear it." With that, Naruto attempted to run forward, but he fell to the ground before he could. "Happy, carry him," Natsu said as he looked down at Naruto. "We're from the same guild, so we can't leave him behind, but we can't afford to slow down either." Happy said as he grabbed Naruto and began to fly towards Clover with him as Erza, Gray, Natsu, and Lucy followed on foot. "That was a nice thing you did for a guy you don't like," Gray commented. "We might not be friends, but we're both mages of Fairy Tail," Natsu said as he ran with all of his speed. It's more than that, Erza said as she ran a little faster. He really cares about saving the master. He's a good guy. A smile made its way to Naruto's face as he listened to their words with his eyes closed. This has to be the first time in a while that I've gotten this worn out from fighting. At that moment, he wished that he had been able to get a bit more help though. As worn out as he was, he did not know if he would be able to fight the shadow user when they caught up to him. At least I have people I can depend on. 9. Lullaby awakened. Happy dropped Naruto off moments before the others got to him. As they did, Lucy helped him walk with his left arm slung across her shoulders. They came upon the sight of the shadow user with Lullaby in his hands, alongside Makarov. They tried to scream out a warning, but an overweight bald man in a dress showed up in front of them just before they could do so. "Sure," he said, immediately stopping them from saying anything. "The best part is coming up. Just watch." He looked them over and smiled. "You guys are cute." "Who is he?" Lucy asked, obviously freaked out by the middle-aged man in a dress. "The master of Blue Pegasus, Bob," Erza answered with a frown. The frown only deepened when he addressed her. "My, you sure have grown up, Erza," Bob said. "What's going on? Hurry up already," Makarov said impatiently. "No!" Erza exclaimed, but her words seemed to be lost in the wind. "Just stay quiet. This should be interesting." "Goldmine," another master said as he appeared. "Now," Makarov said, "nothing will change if you do. Weaklings will stay weak forever, but weakness if not evil. Human beings are weak creatures to begin with. Alone, you feel nothing but insecurity. That's why we form guilds. That's why we have friends. We walk together in order to live a strong life. The clumsy ones will run into more walls than the others, and it may also take them longer to get there. If you believe in tomorrow and put yourself out there, you can naturally obtain your strength. That's how you'll be able to smile and live strong." As if an afterthought, he added, "without having to depend on such a flute, of course." The man dropped the flute and bowed to the ground. "I admit my loss." Immediately after, Erza, Natsu, and Gray emerged happy to see Makarov alive, while Lucy helped Naruto walked over. "Why are you 5 here?" Makarov asked in shock. "You're amazing. Your words deeply touched me," Erza said as she gave him a hug. "You're incredible," Natsu exclaimed. "You need to see a doctor," Lucy said to the shadow user as Naruto removed his arm from her shoulders, no longer needing her support to walk. "Don't know what's going on, but you're cute too," Bob said, looking at the shadow user. "You mages have no guts," the flu suddenly said, shocking everyone. "I can't hold it any longer. I'll just eat you all myself." Smoke began to leak out of its mouth at that point. "The flute talked," Lucy exclaimed in shock. "The smoke is forming something," Happy said. As the smoke cleared away, a massive demon was in its place. "Let me consume your pitiful souls." "What's going on?" Erza asked, shocked. "It's a demon from the Book of Zerif," Goldmine answered as he looked at it in fear. "I'm starving to death, so I'm going to eat your souls," Lullaby said in a demonic voice. "Souls are edible?" Natsu asked, somehow taking the time to be puzzled over such a thing. "How would I know?" Gray asked, astounded by his rival's idiocy. "How did a demon come out of a flute?" Lucy asked, puzzled by a far more relevant question. "It's a living magic, Zerif's magic," Goldmine said with a frown. "Then it's an enemy that needs to be finished off," Naruto said as he warily assumed a fighting stance. "Whose soul shall I devour first?" Lullaby asked. "I know! All of yours!" Before it could do anything, Erza used Requip magic to put on her Heaven's Wheel armor, and then she charged alongside Natsu and Gray to fight the demon. Immediately, Erza sliced up one of its legs, Natsu hit in the head with an iron fist of the fire dragon, and Gray used Ice Make, shield to defend the spectators from an attack. "Ice Make, Ice Lance," Gray said as a dozen curving spikes of ice shot at the demon, hitting him. "I'm going to help," Naruto said as he felt entered his initial Jinchuriki form and dashed forward. "Multi-shadow clone jutsu," he whispered. Suddenly, 300 shadow clones appeared and each one formed a Rasengan while Naruto slammed his fists together. "Fox Demon's Breath," Naruto said before he began to inhale. He put his fists in front of his mouth and began to exhale red chakra from his mouth, similar to how Natsu blew fire with Fire Dragon's roar. The demon's legs appeared to be melting when Naruto's new attack hit them. As it had trouble standing all the way up, Naruto's clones jumped and used their attacks on it. Once each clone used its Rasengan, they dispelled. After the cloud of smoke disappeared, the demon was revealed to be covered in 300 small, round holes. The attack had clearly injured it a great deal, but it had not finished it off. Only a demon could have withstood 300 clones hitting it with a Rasengan. "We can handle it from here," Erza said as her armor switched to a mostly black type of armor with wings. She flew at it and hit it with a single blow that caused tremendous damage. Fire Dragon's brilliant flame, Natsu exclaimed as he hit Lullaby in the face with a powerful fire strike using both hands. Ice Make, Ice Lance, Gray said as even more spikes than last time shot at Lullaby. Completely and utterly devastated by the barrage of magic, Lullaby collapsed and fell on top of the building where the masters had previously been having their meeting prior to coming out to watch the fight. This is amazing, one of the masters said. They defeated Xerath's demon so quickly. So this is Fairy Tail's strongest team, Goldmine said thoughtfully as he looked at Naruto, Natsu, Gray, and Erza. What do you think? Aren't they great? Makarov asked with a big grin. They're the best, Lucy said with a smile. Now you need to go see a doctor, Bob said as he approached the shadow user. Goodness, I don't really know why this happened, but we owe Fairy Tail, Goldmine said. Don't worry about it, Makarov said with a nervous chuckle. Suddenly, the guild masters turned their attention to the crumbled ruins of their destroyed meeting hall. How could this be? One of the masters asked in shock. All at the same time, realization dawned in their eyes and they looked at the members of Fairy Tail as they were doing their best to get away without running full out. Get them! One of the masters said, causing all of the members of Fairy Tail to run as fast as they could. I'm sorry for disgracing you, Master, Erza said as she looked ashamed while running. It's okay, Makarov said, not appearing to be upset in the least. I doubt they'll invite me next time though. I thought you couldn't run anymore? Lucy asked as she saw that Naruto was running faster than any of them. I'm not sticking around the big guy in the dress, Naruto said as he started to run even faster, prompting everyone to laugh. It was the day after the defeat of Xerath's demon, Lullaby. Naturally, such a situation could not pass without a group of 10 individuals meeting. That group of individuals was the council. They were essentially the governing body of 10% of the country, the mages of Fiori. The council clearly had to meet to discuss current events because of how major of a situation it had been. The entire Eisenwald situation was definitely not a minor thing, no matter how quickly it was dealt with. As always, Fairy Tail was an annoyance in the back of at least 6 of the members' minds. Sitting in the center of the table was the resealed Lullaby in its flute form. Now that it was with the council, they could put it away somewhere that it would never be used again. There are still tons of dark guilds out there, one member of the council said. We should just take them out altogether then, another member of the council suggested. How do you propose we do that? Seagrain asked curiously. By the lack of response, he could tell that no one knew the answer to that question. There were simply too many dark guilds out there, and some of them were so powerful that only Phantom Lord or Fairy Tail had the power to defeat them. The only other option would have been an alliance between guilds. It's intolerable to think that anyone would dare use Xerath's magic again, another member of the council said, changing the subject. First of all, how could they have obtained such magic easily? A fourth member of the council asked with a frown. Once again, no answer was forthcoming. What matters in the grand scheme of things is that Fairy Tail, the one guild that we have all considered to be a thorn in our sides, showed up and saved the day, Seagrain said, drawing their attention. They took down on Guild and Lullaby, with only 5 mages, Altair said, clearly impressed. None of the other members of the council were too happy at that thought. I can understand why you don't want to admit the truth, but that's how it is, Seagrain said, shaking his head. If the guild masters were killed by Lullaby, things would have been much worse. Some of us would have certainly lost our heads. Are you insinuating that it was our fault? Another council member asked in shock. That's out of the question. The problem is their reckless behavior. They really should be thanked for everything they've done, Seagrain said, making all but Altair frown. The thought of thanking them for anything was quite an unpleasant thought for most of them. They caused damage to Ashibana Station and destroyed the building where the Guild League meets, another member argued. Plus, we've had 2 reports filed against them in regards to magic 4-wheelers. They rented one that ended up being destroyed and stole another. That's Fairy Tail for you, Seagrain said with a shrug. It would be boring without them around. It seemed that it was at least the 100th time that he had made that statement, and he appeared to believe it as much as always. As the meeting continued on, he exchanged a look with Altair. The look meant unclear thing to the both of them. They needed to talk. What do you need? Altair asked as she stood in one of the various rooms of the council's headquarters. With her every word, she sounded more and more serious, not doubting for a second that Seagrain had something important to talk about. What have you heard of the new member of Fairy Tail, the blonde-haired boy? Seagrain asked. Nothing, Altair replied with a frown. He seems of little consequence compared to Titania and Salamander. Seagrain nodded. He seems that way, but I don't believe that he's of little consequence to anyone. I heard what happened from some of the guild masters that were present. Fairy Tail's second newest member is a 15-year-old boy with blonde hair and blue eyes. He appears to have 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek, and he does not look native to Fiori at all. In fact, there are no records of his existence prior to him joining Fairy Tail. How is that possible? Altair asked with a frown. To get into Fiori and join a mage guild without any records of his existence, it was suspicious in the least. It's not unheard of, Seagrain said as he shook his head. One of their S-class mages, Mystigan, was almost the same exact way. There are only records of him a year before he joined Fairy Tail. Could it be connected? Altair asked. Maybe, Seagrain said as he shrugged his shoulders. But you still haven't heard the alarming part. Oh? Altair asked, intrigued. Seagrain did not call things alarming without good reason. He can create at least 300 tangible clones of himself that are capable of using magic, Seagrain said, smiling at the expression on her face. Plus, he can breathe out an unusual type of energy. Because Lullaby reverted to a flute upon defeat, I'm unsure of what the energy did, but they say that it was capable of melting a demon's flesh. Fire? Altair asked with a frown. The abilities he was speaking of were unnatural, and she had never heard of any of them. No, Seagrain said as he began to walk to the door. It was described as being something like a mist of crimson energy. One of the guild masters described it as feeling evil, even from afar. Magic that feels even in the presence of one of Zerif's demons? Altair asked with a frown. That's unheard of. Exactly, Seagrain said as he reached for the door handle. We will have to assess the danger he presents when we can get around to it. Understood, Altair said stiffly as Seagrain departed. Hades will be most interested in hearing of this boy, but it will have to wait until I know more about him. With that, she left the room. 10. Natsu vs. Erza. It was just a little after noon the day after Lullaby was defeated. It was not exactly a normal day for Fairy Tail though. A crowd was already gathering in front of their base as everyone prepared to watch the fight between Natsu and Erza. Erza still was not present yet, but it was not to begin for another 30 minutes still. No one actually knew where Erza was at that moment. She had only said that she had an errand to run that morning and had left the base. In fact, Erza had come to be standing in the poor part of town. It was composed of a few blocks of apartment buildings with an occasional house, but the houses generally looked run down. That was not to say that the apartment buildings did not look run down as well. They were simply less run down. Naruto lives here? The prospect brought a frown to her face. The thought of him living in such a place just did not sit well with her. She knew that he was not exactly rich, but he had done enough jobs that he should have easily been able to afford a better place. He had been part of the guild even longer than Lucy, and apparently she had a much nicer place than what was around there. Normally, she would not have thought too much on someone living there, even if it was another member of Fairy Tail. No, it only bothered her because it was Naruto. He was strong enough to earn her respect in combat, and he did not seem scared of her like everyone else was. It made him different. That was what led her to a puzzling question. Why did he intentionally live in such a bad part of town when he could quite possibly afford a place as nice as her residence in Fairy Hills? It fueled her curiosity. There was so much that she did not know about him. She made her way up the stairs and found the apartment that Mary Jane had told her he stayed at. She could not help but wonder how her former rival knew where Naruto lived, since not even Makarov knew, but that was a matter for another time. She opened the door and her frown deepened. By the appearance of that part of town, she had assumed that it was not a very nice apartment, but it was even worse than she had thought. It was a fairly small apartment with a total of 3 rooms. The first room appeared to be a kitchen-living room combo. The kitchen part of it had an old wooden bar that filled the corner to her left with and an antique table with a single wooden chair at it. She would not have trusted putting any weight on any of it. A beat-up stove and a sink sat to the left of the bar. The living room part of it was simply composed of a worn-out sofa and an antique coffee table that had a dull gray book setting on it. Looking to her left, she saw that his bedroom door was open. It seemed that the only furniture in it was an old twin-sized bed and a worn-out wardrobe that was missing both of its doors. The few articles of clothing he owned were inside it. She blinked as she recognized a sound that she had been oblivious to since entering. It sounded as though the water was running. He must be taking a shower. I'll wait until he gets out so we can talk. Shaking her head, she walked over to the counters and opened a few doors to the built-in cabinets. Looking through it, she found 5 pots and a dozen or so bowls. When she reached the final few cabinets, she found that he had roughly 100 packets of various kinds of ramen. Is that all he eats? Naruto was growing to be a more and more curious person to her. She honestly could not deny that she hated how little she could find out about him. The previous night, she had asked Kana and Mikao about him, but it seemed that he was secretive about his past even to them. Can I help you? Erza turned around and saw Naruto standing in front of the bathroom door. Fortunately, he was already dressed completely, though she was not sure how he had cut off the water and dressed as fast as she could look through his cabinets. My fight with Natsu is supposed to start in 25 minutes or so, Erza said as she looked at the blonde. Looking into his eyes, she saw a mix of emotions. He had clearly not expected anyone to visit him. But that was not what she truly took note of in his eyes. She saw all the signs of a dark past. She had spent enough time around people with dark pasts to be able to determine a lot about a person just by looking into their eyes. I was getting ready to watch it, Naruto said with a nod. Kana is going to take bets. Yeah, she mentioned it, Erza said, uninterested in any bets that occurred. I came here to see how you were doing and to talk to you. I'm fine, Naruto said, understanding that she was referring to how weak he appeared the previous night. I heal fast. What do you want to talk about? I owe you, Erza said seriously. You made a condition that I'd owe you if you helped me, and you did. I need to know when you want me to teach you swordsmanship. How about tomorrow? Naruto asked. I almost expected you to say today, Erza said with a hint of a smile. No, I have something I need to do first, Naruto said with a frown. Was there anything else you needed? Yes, Erza said with a frown. She hated the secrecy that he maintained, but she could accept it for now. I want to know why you held back so much in our fight. That Rasengan you used against Lullaby and that fox shroud you used to pass through the wind, while they seemed far more powerful than anything you used against me. What did you feel when I used my chakra cloak? Naruto asked. He must mean that shroud. It felt strange. When you used it, it felt like a demon was standing in your place. It's kind of like Myra's takeover, now that I think about it. You wouldn't be wrong, Naruto muttered under his breath, though she easily heard it. It's not a form that I enjoy using. If I have no choice, I'll use it, but it's not something I would pull out normally. When Natsu hit me with his fire dragon's roar in our fight, I had to pull it out so his flames didn't burn me. It's not always easy to stop using that form when I still have an opponent to fight though. That's why I knocked Natsu out in that form as quickly as I could. He doesn't want to talk about that form, so I'll try not to ask about it anymore. I get the feeling he'll tell me when he's ready. What about your Rasengan? Erza asked curiously. The Rasengan is the perfect grinding tool, Naruto said with a sigh. It's too dangerous to use on a comrade. If Master was giving me a test or something, I wouldn't be afraid to use it, but that's just because I know I couldn't beat him unless he was sleeping. Even then, I might have a little trouble. He laughed a bit at the end, earning a smile from Erza. You'll have to tell me about yourself one day, Erza said as she turned towards the door. But in the meantime, we should head to the guild so we can get there early. There will likely be a crowd. Right, Naruto said with a nod. Out of curiosity, is it true that your swords are magic swords? Yes, Erza answered, a little surprised by the question. Why do you ask? Well, I'm a little curious about magic swords, Naruto admitted. I don't have a magic sword because I don't know if it would actually be magic in my hands. I don't have magic power like you guys, and my chakra is too different from magic power to power the same things you can. Erza frowned as she led him out of the apartment. I'm afraid so. Without magic power, you can't use magic swords or magic armor. A mage's magic power is what powers them. Oh, that's too bad, Naruto said, clearly not too happy with that information. What is this chakra he possesses though? I've never heard of it before. It looks like I'll have to visit the library before too long. Her thoughts returned to the task at hand when she reached the street. With that, they made their way to the fairy tale base so she could fight Natsu. Naruto immediately walked up to Kana when he arrived in front of the guild and handed her 10,000 jewels. I'm betting on Erza. Of course you are, Kana said with a smirk as she took it from him. Just remember that just because she beat you and you beat him, that doesn't mean that he can't win. Snake beats Toad and Toad beats Slug, but Slug beats Snake, Naruto said with a nod. It was an archaic form of rock paper scissors in that world, but he was familiar with it because of Jiraiya. It was a bit ironic when it came to the Sannin though. After all, everyone in the elemental nations knew that the Slug Princess always beat the Toad Sage. You're not worried that she'll lose, Kana said with a hint of mirth in her voice. No, I don't think she will, Naruto agreed. She's the strongest girl in Fairy Tail, after all. And Natsu isn't even in the top 5 of the guys, Gray said as he handed Kana 10,000 jewels and bet on Erza as well. Who are the top 5 guys? Naruto asked curiously. If we count Master, there are at least 4 guys stronger than you, Kana answered. There's Luxus, Mystigan, and Gildarts. What if we don't count the Master? Naruto asked. Would Natsu be in it then? I doubt it, Gray said with a shrug. For one, there is at least one other guy who you'd be hard-pressed to beat. Besides, we never finished our match, and it's possible that Elfman would be stronger than him if he actually went all out for once. Once again, Naruto got the feeling that he had stumbled upon something that was a sensitive subject. It seemed like something had happened with Mirajane and Elfman that made them reluctant to fight all out. We better find some good spots so we can watch this, Gray said as he tapped Naruto on the shoulder and made his way over to the crowd. Naruto reached it just as Makarov began to start the match. Is it really a good idea for 2 of the strongest team to fight? Lucy suddenly asked from behind him. Strongest team? What are you talking about? Gray asked in confusion. You know Natsu, Erza, you, and Naruto, Lucy said. You're the strongest team in Fairy Tail, aren't you? Naruto saw the look on Mirajane's face and remembered hearing her say something about it. Before Gray could make a comment on how it was ridiculous, which would no doubt hurt her feelings, he spoke. I wouldn't call us the strongest team, even if we are pretty tough. Erza's easily the strongest girl in Fairy Tail, but I've heard that there's one team that is even stronger than us, Naruto said as he shook his head. He had heard of the Thunder God tribe a few times. They were 3 siblings that were said to be an incredibly strong team. It'll still be a good match though, Elfman said as he watched on. I doubt it, Gray said with a snort. She'll wipe the floor with him. Suddenly, Erza used her equipped magic and the armor that appeared was like nothing Naruto had ever seen. It was black, red, and gold armor that covered her body similar to the way a one-piece swimsuit would, but it did not have straps of any kind going over her shoulders or around her neck. The armor did have a separate piece that covered her neck like a collar, and there was also armor covering her arms from her elbows down, and her legs from her knees down. That's her Flame Empress armor, Gray said with a smirk. It halves the damage that fire does to her, and the sword she uses in that form is capable of fire attacks. Immediately, the pair moved into action. Natsu was holding nothing back, happy to be able to go all out without worrying about doing any serious damage. Throughout the fight, Erza moved with grace and actually refused to use the fire attacks that Gray had told him she could use with her sword. He suspected that it was because Natsu could eat fire and get stronger. Alas, the fight did not go on long. It came to an abrupt halt as a single clapping sound brought everyone's attention to someone who was approaching them. The person had the shape of a human, but it looked like a frog. What in the hell is that? Stay where you are, everyone, the frog person said. I am a messenger here on behalf of the Magic Council. Everyone looked surprised at that. Many started questioning why they would send a messenger. Naturally, no one but the frog knew the answer to that. Erza Scarlet, you are now under arrest for damage done to Ashibana Station, causing panic in Ashibana Town, destruction of a rented magic four-wheeler, theft of a magic four-wheeler, minor damage to the train tracks between Ashibana Town and Clover Town, and the destruction of the meeting hall where the Guild League meets in Clover Town. I need you to come with me, the messenger said. No, Naruto said, surprising everyone. I won't stand by and let a friend be taken away for something they didn't do. If you intend to interfere, I'll have to place you both under arrest, the messenger said calmly. Naruto was about to say something when Erza spoke. I appreciate it, but I'll be okay, Erza said. Don't worry, Naruto. With that, Naruto watched as Erza walked away with the messenger. After a few minutes, he and Makarov were the only ones in front of the guild. I have to make sure Natsu is captured before he tries to interfere, Makarov said as he turned his back to Naruto. Don't do anything stupid. Yes, master, Naruto said as disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto Uzumaki did not go back on his word. Erza was not solely responsible for the crimes that they said she had committed. She may have partially damaged the train station and caused panic. She might have also stolen a magic four-wheeler. However, Erigor had destroyed the magic four-wheeler that they rented and he had caused the partial damage to the train tracks using his magic. The destroyed meeting hall in Clover was entirely Naruto's fault though. That was how he saw it, at least. He had been the one to weaken Lullaby's legs, and he completely believed that it only fell in that direction because of the Nine-Tails chakra that he had expelled out of his mouth. Naruto had tailed Erza and the messenger to the regional headquarters for the council with ease. Sneaking into the courtroom afterwards was the hard part, but he had successfully gotten in. At that moment, he was standing behind a pillar near the doors, waiting to make his move. Defendant Erza Scarlet, concerning the terrorism committed by Eisenwald the other day, you are suspected of causing damage to Ashibana Station, causing panic in Ashibana, destruction of a rented magic four-wheeler, theft of another magic four-wheeler, causing minor damage to the train tracks between Ashibana and Clover, and destroying the meeting hall in Clover. According to the witness testimony, the one responsible was an armored mage, the chairman said as he looked down at her. How do you plead? Before she could say anything, footsteps drew everyone's attention to the doors. I plead guilty, Erza said, but it was not the Erza that was on trial. It was a perfect replication of her, but it was not her. What's the meaning of this? The chairman asked in shock. A blue-haired mage among the council smiled at the sight and rose to his feet. That's an impressive transformation. Every detail, even the voice and speech patterns, is right. I can't even tell that it's a fake just by looking at it. What is your real name? I am Naruto Uzumaki of Fairy Tail, the fake Erza said before a cloud of smoke formed around her. Naruto's real form was revealed once it dissipated. What is the meaning of this? The chairman demanded once again. I will not allow a friend to suffer for crimes they did not commit, Naruto said with fiery determination in his eyes. If you want to punish someone, then punish me. I caused partial damage to the station in Ashibana. I fought Erigor on the train tracks. I made Lullaby fall on the meeting hall in Clover. I am responsible. That is not your place to decide, the chairman said as he glared at Naruto. If you refuse to let me take the full brunt of the responsibility, then I will at least take half of it, Naruto said as he met the chairman's glare unflinching. I will not stand by while my friends are punished for things they didn't do, and I never go back on my promise. That's my way. All of the members of the council looked shocked by his words, as did Erza. Very well then, the chairman said after a few minutes. You are both found guilty of the aforementioned crimes. You may now leave. Naruto blinked in shock, trying to figure out what was going on. Erza simply walked back over to him and looked at him with a strange look that he could not place. She led him out of there and whispered to him as they left. They were just using me as a scapegoat, she said, shaking her head. I wouldn't have been punished at all. It was just a way to make it seem like I'm completely in control. Still, I can't tell you how much it means to me that you came here to help. I never realized it before, but you're a very inspiring person. Naruto just smiled as they made their way back home. The look in her eyes when she looked at him on the way to Magnolia, it was a sight that he would never forget. Not too many people had ever looked at him with such admiration and appreciation before. It was that day that Naruto and Erza truly became friends. 11. Reunion. Upon arriving back in Magnolia, Naruto had let Erza go back to the guild alone so she could explain everything that had happened to the other members of Fairy Tail. Naruto, on the other hand, had gone back to his apartment with a rather important task that needed completing. During his fight with Erigor, he had heard a voice tell him that he had the power to win without the Nine Tails. The memory of the voice had stayed in his thoughts constantly. If his suspicions were correct, the voice had come within him from the seal. It was not his conscience, which had always sounded like old man Sarutobi. He looked at the dull gray book on the coffee table in his apartment as he sat down. It was a 400-page book on the sealing arts, Fuinjutsu. It was a book that Jiraiya had given to him during training, and it contained all of the basic information on sealing that he had needed to learn. Though he had not been able to find any clues as to how to strengthen his seal through the book, he had read about an interesting thing that morning. Apparently, it was possible to leave an imprint of one's soul within a seal. The book did not explain how it was done, but it said that seal masters could do it. The fourth Hokage was said to be a man who never made a wasted motion. If he was right, then the voice that had spoken to him came from a soul imprint within the seal. If he was right, the fourth Hokage had spoken to him through the seal. As strange of a concept as it was, it seemed like the only possibility outside of the dead contacting him, which he just did not want to imagine. Sure, the fourth Hokage was dead, which would have basically meant that the dead were contacting him, but there was just something different about it. Sitting in a meditative pose, Naruto closed his eyes and began to meditate. He needed to see the seal, and the only way he could do that was by using the exercises that Jiraiya had taught him when he was trying to contact the Nine Tails at will. Within moments, he was standing in his mindscape. The nine-tailed demon fox's massive cage was standing before him with the seal on it. The aforementioned fox was on the other side of the bars of the cage, looking at him. "What do you want, you insolent worm?" the Ninetales asked with a growl. "Shut up," Naruto said as he walked up to the cage. He was not worried about the Ninetales trying to strike him with its claws. It had tried that before when he was standing close to it. His form there was just a mental projection of himself, meaning that he could not actually sustain damage. Blue chakra swirled around his feet and lifted him to the seal, where he placed his right hand and closed his eyes. The Ninetales was clearly confused by his actions, but it did not say anything further. "I don't need you to do whatever you left the imprint for," Naruto suddenly said. "Everything has changed, so please show yourself." "You!" the Ninetales growled. Naruto glanced over his shoulder and saw the fourth Hokage standing about 30 yards away. "Everything has changed," he agreed. "I never wanted to see the Ninetales again, but seeing you outweighs that. After all, it's not every day that I get to see my son." Shock filled Naruto as he was lowered to the ground by the chakra. He did not take a single step upon reaching the ground. "You're my father?" Naruto asked in shock. "Yes," Minato said as he walked a little closer. "I'll understand if you hate me for what I did, but I had to do what I believed was right. You were my son and the village was another part of my family. To save both, I sealed away the Ninetales within you so that you could have the power you needed to defeat the man responsible for the Ninetales attack. However, that's not important any longer. Now that you're in another world, there is nothing that can be done about it." "I can never return," Naruto said as he walked up to the man that had helped bring him into the world. He had always respected and admired Minato Namikaze, and that did not change with the recent revelation. He could not bring himself to hate the man before him. "No," Minato said, shaking his head. "However, if I told you I could show you how to open a portal and go back, would you ask me to do it?" "No," Naruto replied after a few moments of thought. "Don't get me wrong. I love the Hidden Leaf Village, my friends, and my teachers. But my best friend betrayed me, the girl I always liked never liked me back, my teachers never became more than just teachers, and so many people hated me. What I have in Fairy Tail, it's 1,000 times better. All I want for you is to be happy, Minato said with a smile as he walked up to Naruto and ruffled his hair. But we can't talk for too long. You need to know how to repair the seal once it grows too deteriorated. Yeah, Naruto said with a nod. There isn't anyone else who can fix it when it gets bad. I'll seal away most of my knowledge of Fuinjutsu within you then, Minato said with a smile, shocking Naruto. I'll keep some of them from you. I don't want my signature jutsu resurfacing in any world. It's a weapon for killing, and you don't need it. Plus, some of the seals I know would do you no good. It would be pointless for you to learn how to use certain seals when the only chakra in this world is inside of you. I understand, Naruto said. Before you do it, I want something else from you though. Oh? Minato asked, curious. I want you to promise that you'll pass on a message to old man Sarutobi, Naruto said with a smile. Tell him that I always thought of him as a grandfather. I will, Minato said as he closed his eyes and poked Naruto in the forehead, sealing most of his Fuinjutsu knowledge within his son. Once it was done, he removed his hand and opened his eyes. His feet were fading away. My son, I'm proud of the man you've become. Your mother would be too. Since you asked a favor of me, I'll ask one of you. Stop bottling up your emotions. The loss of everyone you grew up knowing and the loss of your dream, they're tearing you up. Until you face them, you can never truly move on. Oh, and just because I sealed everything inside you, that doesn't mean you will automatically learn it though. You'll have to learn it within your mindscape. With that, Minato Namake's faded away. Naruto collapsed to his knees and let tears fall as he began to grieve for all that he had lost: his home, his friends, his teachers, his dream, and his father. After he had regained control of himself and was somewhat understanding of the realization of everything he had lost, Naruto had sought out the information that his father had sealed within him. He had no intention of trying to learn anything that day, but he did want to know how to access it. As it turned out, the information appeared as a large book on a stand in one of the corridors of his mindscape. Looking at a few pages of it, he had found that his father had truly compiled a book of Fuinjutsu within his mind, but that was not all that he had put in it. The first page had nothing to do with sealing. It was the instructions for utilizing a specific ninjutsu that could easily be useful. It was the instructions for the toad oil bullet. Thanks, Dad. This'll be useful. Shaking his head, he left his mindscape. He needed to rest and to think on everything that had happened before he tried to learn anything. I'm not late, am I? Naruto asked. It was the next day, and he was standing behind the guild with Erza, who had her normal armor equipped and a long sword in her right hand. No, you're just on time, Erza said as she held her left hand out. A second long sword appeared in it. Take this sword. It's a magic sword that normally becomes sharper and stronger by drawing on the wielder's magic. In your hands, it is simply a well-constructed long sword. Naruto took the sword from her, but he looked a little confused as he took it. He had a sword of his own, so he was not sure why she was handing him another one. You can borrow this one during our sessions, she said. I understand that you have been using a Jien, but I'm not training you to use a specific kind of sword. The long sword you're holding is actually called a bastard sword. Its hilt is long enough for a hand and a half to fit on it. If you can learn to use it, you'll be able to easily adapt to shorter, lighter swords. Okay, Naruto said as he took the sword in both hands, his left hand touching the pommel. Let's see what you can do, Erza said as she entered a fighting stance with her sword in hand. I can't teach you anything until I know how good you are. Immediately, the pair moved into action. As they heard the sound of swords clashing, Natsu stood up and looked around. What's going on? Is someone fighting? Calm down, Gray said, shaking his head. Erza's teaching Naruto how to use a sword. I thought you were teaching him that, Kana said with a frown. You guys kept practicing outside last week. I'm not a weapons specialist, Gray said with a shrug. Erza is best suited to teaching someone to use a sword. It's just too bad that any sword he gets won't be a match for any sword-wielding mage. Yes, he can't use magic swords, so his swords won't be as strong as that of a sword-wielding mage, Makarov agreed from the bar. He can't use magic swords? Mary Jane asked curiously. He uses a different form of magic that isn't compatible with magic swords, magic armor, or magic four-wheelers, Makarov replied. He doesn't actually have magic power in the same sense that anyone else in here does. Is it possible for him to gain magic power? Kana asked, surprising everyone. It's impossible for someone who lacks magic power to gain it, Makarov said with a frown, but he had a suspicion that she knew something he did not. I suppose so, Kana said with shrug. But that Fuinjutsu he uses, maybe it's not as impossible as everyone thinks. A sudden bar brawl began, taking everyone's attention off of the conversation. That night, Naruto was in his mindscape once again, going over the book that his father had sealed away in his mind. He knew that it was not really a book. It was just a form that the sealed knowledge took, but it was easier to think of it as a book. He had committed the total bullet to memory before moving on and skimming through the first half of the book. He had only found information about Fuinjutsu that was already in the book he owned. That changed when he reached the second half of the book though. He found a note at the start of the second half of the book that was addressed to him. Naruto, I'm sure you know everything before this book already. I know Jiraiya-sensei trained you, so he no doubt taught you quite a bit about Fuinjutsu already. If I'm right and you know seal theory and the mechanics behind the seals already, then this next part is what you need. It contains a variety of seals that are far more advanced than the generic sealing technique. They go in order from easiest to hardest, so don't just skip to the back of the book. Knowing how to repair the seal is pointless unless you have the skill necessary to do it. Dad. Naruto just shook his head with a smile and turned the page. He flipped a few more pages, taking in the names of the seals that were written about in it. The finger engraving seal, the fire sealing method, the water sealing method, the earth sealing method, the lightning sealing method, the wind sealed method, the tailed beast chakra suppression seal. Pervy Sage never taught me how to do any of it. This is going to be good. I'll get started on the finger engraving seal first. Naruto exited his mindscape, his living room coming back into sight. As soon as he became aware of his surroundings, he saw something unusual. A cloth-wrapped object was sitting on his coffee table. It had not been there when he entered his mindscape. He was sure of it. He carefully unwrapped it, and could not help but be shocked by what he saw. Inside it was a beautiful long sword with a steel blade, a steel cross guard with a red crystal at the center of it, a black leather-wrapped hilt, and a red crystal for a pommel. Those aren't regular crystals. His eyes widened as they focused on the red crystals. He could feel the power within them when he touched them. They're lacrima, magic-filled crystals. Next to the sword was a note. Picking it up, he read it aloud. I heard you can't use magic of your own, so I thought you might appreciate this more than most. Using the magic in the two lacrima of the sword, this magic sword isn't useless to you. Use it sparingly, for the two lacrima within Fire Slinger will eventually run out of power. A frown came to his face as he saw that the note was not signed. However, he could not help but be happy that he finally had a magic sword that he could actually use. I wonder who dropped it off, Naruto muttered before he shook his head. As curious as he was, his main goal at the moment was using the finger engraving seal, so he went over to the kitchen table with the intention of practicing it on the furniture. It was not his, so he did not care what happened to it. In the street outside of Naruto's apartment, Mystigan made his way out of Magnolia. He had heard mention that Erza was teaching Naruto how to use a sword before he put everyone in Fairy Tail to sleep, and he had even heard someone mention his lack of magic power, which made the use of magic swords mostly useless. He was still not sure why he had given an Idolos weapon to the second newest member of Fairy Tail. Perhaps he sympathized with the young man. After all, either of them possessed magic of their own, and Mystigan was well aware that Naruto was not from Earthland either. He had sensed Naruto's arrival into the world and had just barely been beaten by poorly Yusuke to the scene. At first, he had thought it was a reverse anima of some kind, but it had been far too different from anima. Still, he was confident that Naruto had nothing but good intentions. He had certainly caused no harm since showing up. We will have to talk one day in the future, Naruto Uzumaki, the most mysterious mage of Fairy Tail said quietly as he left town. 12. A new job. When Naruto arrived for his training session with Erza, he immediately knew something was wrong. It was the only thing that stopped him from telling her about the magic sword that showed up in his apartment the previous night. All thoughts of it faded away when he saw the look in her eyes. She appeared to be angry, which was a side of her that he could not recall seeing before. What's wrong? He immediately asked. You're late, Erza said with the same angry look. No, I'm not, Naruto said with a raised eyebrow. It was still 10 minutes before their training session was supposed to begin. After having Kakashi for a sensei, he made sure to be on time. He knew how much tardiness annoyed other people. Erza frowned, but she nodded after a few moments. I apologize, Naruto. I'm just not in a good mood. I just found out that Natsu and Lucy left last night after stealing an S-class job from the second floor. Naruto's eyes widened. He had been lectured about the second floor before. After all, he had thought it would be a cool place to go until Makarov stopped him and explained what the second floor was for. Only S-class mages could go up there, one of which was Erza. He knew that there were only 5 S-class mages in Fairy Tail, and Natsu was definitely not one. They're in trouble, he said as he took in the information. I'm surprised you haven't gone after them. I showed up an hour too late, Erza said with a mixture of emotions. It appeared she was happy to hear him say that but displeased about still being there. Gray went after them. If he doesn't bring them back by tomorrow morning, I can go after them, but Master refuses to let me go until then. Let's get your mind off of that then, Naruto said as he held a hand out. Agreed, Erza said as she summoned 2 swords and handed him one. You clearly learn better by doing, so I won't be giving you drills like most people go through when learning swordsmanship. I want you to come at me with only the use of your sword. I will stay on the defense and point out any mistakes you made. We'll switch off and on every hour. No one could say that Erza was not a tough teacher. In fact, Naruto would be more than happy to insist that she was the toughest later that day when she started slapping him with the flat of her blade every time he left himself open. Despite how tough she was during training, Naruto could not help but admit that he cherished his time with his newest friend. That night, Naruto was sitting at his kitchen table with 2 stacks of paper in front of him. The one to the left was quite a bit smaller than the one to the right. He had started entering his mindscape, memorizing a single seal, and copying what the book in his mind said about it on paper. As such, he was able to more readily understand each seal as he learned it, and he had physical copies of the seals that he was learning. So far, he had managed to learn the finger engraving seal, the seals for the 5 elements, and the tailed beast suppression seal, though he was not 100% sure the last one worked since the only tailed beast in his world was inside of him. He did know that he could not consciously draw upon its chakra if he had one attached to him, but he was unsure if it would suppress its chakra if he was already using it. For some strange reason, Naruto found that he learned Fuinjutsu easier to learn than expected. His mind was not entirely on the seals he had already learned though. Earlier, he had skipped forward in the book to see how many different seals there were in it. Much to his surprise, there were only about 25 more seals left before the section on his seal. The part about his seal was somewhere around 100 pages long. Apparently, it was a very complicated seal. In addition to that, there was apparently background information on the seal. The only thing that had stopped him from reading about it was a note that his father had left in the book in the front of that section. It had told him not to start reading it until he had at least read everything else in it. The last 5 seals in the book were almost as tempting to read as the part about his seal, but that was only because they were labeled as forbidden jutsu at the top of their pages. He had actually read a few paragraphs about the first of the 5 forbidden seals. He had trouble reading past that though. It was a seal that bound the soul of a living being to a specific item, preventing them from moving on to the afterlife. He immediately knew that the seals that his father deemed forbidden were not forbidden in the same way that the multi-shadow clone jutsu were. Shaking his head away from such thoughts, he removed a blank sheet of paper from the stack to the right and closed his eyes. He was not going to waste any time. There was something pushing him to get stronger, and the next jutsu in the book could only help him. He could not think of the one that he began to copy down as a seal, despite its relevance to sealing. It allowed the user to generate a seal purely using their chakra. As such, they could touch someone and leave a seal on them within a single moment. Apparently, his father was the creator of the jutsu, and he had never taught anyone else how to use it. As he continued working, he had no idea what awaited him the next day. The next morning, Naruto frowned as he saw that Erza was not behind the guild like she had been the past 2 days. It seemed that she had gone to bring Natsu and Lucy back to the guild after all. Sighing, he entered the guild and noticed that Makarov was looking at him as if he was amazed. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear. Isn't that the old saying? Mikao asked with a chuckle. What's going on? Naruto asked in confusion. I was just going to send for you, Makarov said with a grin. You saved us some trouble. An important job has come up, and I want you to lead a team to deal with it. Naruto could not hide his shock, or his excitement, at the master of fairy tales' words. He had never really been in charge of a job before. What's the job? He asked with a grin as he walked up to Makarov. Councilman Seagrain has offered this job specifically to you, Makarov said, surprising everyone who was listening. Because of your success during the Lullaby incident and your actions when Erza was put under trial, he wants you to lead a team of your choosing. Your task is to defeat and capture the Black Phoenix, a fairly small dark guild. Everything about the job sounded fun to Naruto. He longed to push himself to his limits to see how much he had grown thanks to his father's Fuinjutsu. What's the pay? 1,000,000 jewels, Makarov said, making his eyes widen. Black Phoenix was as large as Eisenwald at one time, but most of them agreed to disband when they were named a Dark Guild 2 years ago. The council learned that their forces stand at 26 mages. Their location is halfway between Ashibana Town and Mount Hackle. You may choose your team. His old personality tried to slip out at that point, but he knew that declaring he could do it by himself would not have been a smart idea. He was getting the feeling that the job was some sort of test. What kind of guy is their leader? I've never heard of anyone with a name like that. I have no idea who he is, Makarov said, surprising Naruto. I'm sure it's an alias. The strongest members of Black Phoenix disbanded and joined other guilds, so it isn't considered to be a very strong dark guild. There are rumors that their leader isn't even a member of Black Phoenix from its days as a legal guild. I'm inclined to believe that it was an unallied mage who took over the guild when they lost most of their strength. He's said to be a powerful opponent, nonetheless. He is said to possess some sort of explosive magic. Did the guild specialize in fire magic? Naruto asked after a few moments later. Was the name that obvious? Makarov asked with a chuckle as he nodded. Okay, I'll pick my team, Naruto said as he looked around. His eyes first landed on Kana. He knew how strong she was. They worked well together too. Hey Kana, do you want in on this? Sure, she said as she turned around in her barstool. We need 3 more people, Naruto said as he looked around. With 5 mages, he would feel better about the job. He was more cautious than he had been in his world, so he wanted to have more than enough people just in case Dog Anders was a challenge to fight. How about Shadow Gear? Kana asked, catching the attention of Levy's team. They have good teamwork and are pretty strong. What do you guys think? Naruto asked as he looked over at Levy, Droy, and Jet. They all looked to each other before nodding their heads. We'll help, Levy said. That's settled then, Naruto said as he turned to face Makarov once again. We'll go and take care of that right now. Good luck, Makarov said. Thanks, Naruto replied. He looked over at his new allies and said, Meet me at the train station in half an hour. I'll go with you now, Kana said as she rose to her feet and walked up to him. Naruto gave her a curious look, but he simply nodded and walked out of the guild with her. About 10 minutes passed before they were nearing the train station. It was at that time that Kana decided to say something. Naruto, I was wondering if you'd like to go out after the job is over, Kana said with a somewhat nervous smile. That stopped Naruto in his tracks. He looked her over for a moment before asking, It's not that I don't like you or something, but why would you want to? I just want to go out on a date. I'm not asking for anything serious right now, Kana said with a light smile. Have you seen some of the other guys in Fairy Tail? I wouldn't be caught dead going on a date with Elfman, Natsu, or Gray. Some of the others our age are nearly as bad. I don't know, Naruto said as he looked away. I doubt you'd enjoy going out with me though. I've never actually been on a date. Then we need to change that, Kana said with a look that told him she was not going to take no for an answer. Seeing that look, he tried to think of an honest reason that he did not want to go on a date with her. She was his closest friend in Earthland, she was a rather powerful mage, she was incredibly beautiful, and she actually wanted to go on a date with him. He knew that if Jiraiya was there at that moment, he would smack him upside the head. On second thought, I'd be happy to, Naruto said with a smile. But you get to pay. That's not what a gentleman would do, Kana said as she crossed her arms. Erza told me she'd beat Natsu when the match started back up, Naruto said with a grin. I bet on her, but you never paid me back. Damn, you remembered, Kana muttered under her breath, making Naruto laugh. You seem much more happy than you were when you first joined. I am, Naruto agreed. Naruto and Kana sat right in front of the train tracks on a bench while they waited on their partners to arrive. They had already bought the train tickets for the entire team, so waiting was all that was left to do. Levy was the first one to show up. Looking at her again, Naruto had to admit that she was unlike most of the girls in Fairy Tail. She was not quite up there in looks department in comparison to some of the girls that he spent a lot of time around. That was not to say that she was not attractive though. Whereas Mirajane, Erza, Lucy, and Kana were, for the lack of a better term, hot, Levy was simply a cute girl. There was one thing that stood out about her though. She was a genius. She knew a variety of ancient languages and was the only person Naruto had allowed to study his paper bombs. How's it going? Naruto asked, immediately catching both girls' attention. They knew what he was talking about. It's hopeless, Levy said with a frown. Even with the instructions on how you create paper bombs, I can't figure it out. They just won't explode. Here, Naruto said as he handed her a dull gray book the instant that it appeared from his right wristband. I should have given it to you right away. What's this? She asked in confusion as she looked at the cover. It was called A Guide to the Sealing Arts. It's a book on seals and seal theory, Naruto said as he felt a headache come on. Even though he was more skilled with Fuinjutsu than any of his classmates had been, it was still confusing to think about seal theory. Since you can't figure it out, that might help you. It explains how it works, and why the seals have to be made in a certain way. Thank you? Levy said in the most excited voice that he had heard in a long time as she bent down and gave him a hug. She broke away from the hug and put on her special glasses that let her read fast, and began to read the book. Why is she so excited? Naruto asked Kana, fully aware that his blue-haired teammate was not paying attention to him. Her magic is kind of like your sealing arts. They're pretty different, but they are kind of related regardless, Kana said as she shook her head at the blue-haired girl's antics. Well, they're just on time, Naruto said as he rose to his feet. Jet and Droy were not too far behind the bench. Let's hop on a train and head to Ashibana town. We can go and kick the Black Phoenix's ass from there. Kana just rolled her eyes at the blonde's behavior. What if neglected Naruto gets sealed away fairy tale? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.